Arizona's highways stretch for miles under a relentless sun. By day, the desert seems endless, quiet, and inviting. By night, the same roads are haunted. Lonely motels stand along these highways, their neon signs flickering in the dark. Doors open on their own. Footsteps echo through empty halls. Figures move in the shadows, sometimes standing silently in rooms where no one is checked in. Some travelers swear they saw a ghostly guest at the poolside, though the waters were frozen and abandoned. Others claim to hear whispers from the desert winds, calling names that should never be spoken. And on some stretches of road, people vanish entirely, leaving only luggage behind. Tonight, we will drive down Arizona's haunted highways, stopping at 25 roadside motels where the living are never truly alone. Greetings, my friends. I hope you are prepared for a journey into Arizona's darkest corners. These motels are more than empty buildings along dusty highways. They are haunted homes, resting places for restless spirits, and the sites of stories that chill the bone. From sudden disappearances to shadowy figures glimpsed in hallways, these motels carry secrets the desert never reveals in daylight. Some have felt icy hands brush against their shoulders as they reach for the door. Others have heard whispers echoing through empty corridors, the kind that make your heart pound in fear. Every motel tells a story. Every hallway holds a memory of someone who was never meant to leave. Before we drive any further, I want to ask you, if you arrived at a motel on a lonely desert highway and heard whispers from the empty room next door, would you stay to investigate? Or would you lock the door and flee into the night? Now, let us begin our journey into the most haunted roadside motels in Arizona. Now, let us begin our journey into the most haunted roadside motels in Arizona. Now, let us begin our journey into the most haunted roadside motels in Arizona. Now, let us begin our journey into the most haunted roadside motels in Arizona. The Desert Mirage Motel rests quietly along the dusty stretch of Route 66. Its once bright exterior now faded and cracked. Desert winds whip across the empty parking lot, stirring loose gravel and the remnants of forgotten travelers. The neon sign, once a beacon to weary visitors, flickers sporadically, casting jagged shadows across the sand and the building's worn facade. Even without power, the light seems to pulse, as if the motel itself is breathing in the quiet night. Visitors speak of figures on the second floor, shadows peering from empty windows. They appear for a moment, then vanish before anyone can approach. The hallways are silent but heavy, filled with a sense of expectancy, as if the walls themselves are listening. Each room seems to hold a memory, a fragment of lives once passing through, and now lingering in the stillness of abandonment. The parking lot stretches out under a darkening sky, isolated and vast. Travelers report hearing whispers calling their names, drifting from the edges of the building. The voice is soft, almost intimate, yet impossible to locate. Footsteps echo where no one walks, and doors creak in the desert wind, yet close without cause. The sensation is disorienting, a blend of curiosity and unease that heightens with every step closer to the motel. The sensation is disorienting, a blend of curiosity and unease that heightens with every step closer to the motel. Inside, the motel feels frozen in time. Furniture remains in dusty rooms, and faded patterns of wallpaper hint at a once lively past. Lights flicker briefly in rooms without electricity, throwing shadows that dance across cracked walls and empty hallways. It is impossible to tell if these are mere tricks of the eye, or if the building is alive with something unseen. The air is thick with tension, a mixture of heat, dust, and a presence that refuses to let go. Guests who have dared to explore the Desert Mirage Motel speak of moments when time feels suspended. A figure stands at the end of a corridor, unmoving, staring. A room door swings open slowly, yet no wind is present. Whispers float through the hallways, repeating names or fragments of sentences that are familiar yet impossible to understand. Every sound is amplified in the quiet, and every shadow seems to move with purpose. The exterior of the motel is equally unsettling. The neon Cigna S flicker creates long, stretched shapes across the sand, giving an impression of movement where there is none. The desert stretches endlessly beyond, silent except for the occasional cry of a distant animal. Figures have been reported walking along the outer walls, vanishing when approached. The desert itself seems part of the haunting, carrying echoes of footsteps and voices across its expanse. Even in daylight, the Desert Mirage Motel exudes an eerie presence. The sun casts long shadows across the Bodinga S facade, highlighting cracks and peeling paint. Doors and windows seem to watch the visitor, their dark interiors hinting at stories that refuse to fade. People report a feeling of being observed, a prickling awareness that unseen eyes track each step. It is a quiet vigilance, persistent and unrelenting, as if the motel itself guards its secrets. Some who stay near the motel speak of dreams that mirror the Bodinga S deserted hallways. They describe corridors stretching farther than possible, rooms filled with shapes and whispers, an overwhelming sense of presence. The Desert Mirage Motel seems to reach beyond the physical, touching the imagination and the subconscious alike. At night, the atmosphere thickens. The neon pulses. The desert wind carries murmurs, and shadows stretch across empty rooms. Figures appear in fleeting glimpses along the second floor, along hallways, or just beyond the parking lot. The motel becomes a landscape of tension and curiosity, a place where every corner holds a possibility, and every shadow tells a story. Visitors leave the Desert Mirage Motel with a lingering awareness. The flickering lights, the whispers, and the shadowy figures combine to create an experience. The motel is more than an abandoned building. It is a repository of memory, a stage where the past intersects with the present, and a place where the desert holds its secrets in the silence. Those who drive past during the day may see nothing remarkable, yet at night the building transforms. It becomes alive with echoes, shadows, and whispers, a place where the ordinary bends into the extraordinary. The Desert Mirage Motel remains on Route 66, a silent sentinel to the unknown, drawing travelers into its quiet mystery and leaving them forever changed by the presence that lingers in the desert sand. The motel, with its flickering neon and empty rooms, is a reminder of stories that refuse to fade. Figures drift, whispers call, and shadows move across hallways and parking lots. It is a place where the past is tangible, yet elusive, where visitors sense the unseen and feel the weight of memory in every step. The Desert Mirage Motel stands abandoned but alive, a haunting that continues to pulse quietly along the lonely stretch of Route 66, waiting for those who are willing to notice. Canyon View sits perched near the edge of a winding canyon, a place where the landscape is both breathtaking and unsettling. The air carries a chill that seems to seep into the bones, and the silence of surrounding cliffs is profound. Guests often arrive expecting tranquility, only to discover that the inn holds more than the natural beauty of its location. Doors slam behind visitors with no apparent force. The sound echoes through the hallways, startling those who walk alone. Each slam resonates off wooden walls and empty corridors, creating an unsettling rhythm. The movement of the doors is sudden, unexpected, and impossible to predict. Footsteps echo along deserted hallways. Sometimes they match the pace of a guest, and at other times they seem entirely independent, moving where no one is visible. The sound is subtle but persistent, a constant reminder that the inn is not as empty as it appears. Each step seems to carry a weight of memory, of those who have passed through before. Some guests have seen ghostly figures standing at the edge of the canyon. These apparitions watch silently, their gaze fixed on the darkness that stretches below. They do not move, yet their presence is powerful, almost magnetic, drawing the attention of anyone who ventures near the canyon rim. The figures appear and vanish without warning, leaving behind a lingering sense of unease. The inn itself is a labyrinth of narrow corridors and wooden staircases. Shadows stretch and twist in the dim lighting, creating shapes that vanish when approached. Windows overlook the canyon, reflecting distorted images of visitors and occasionally showing figures that are not there. The architecture seems to hold a memory of its own, every beam and railing infused with the presence of the past. At night, the atmosphere becomes even more charged. The canyon seems to breathe with the wind, carrying whispers that rise and fall with the currents. Doors swing open and shut with sudden gusts, but sometimes the movement occurs without wind, leaving only the sound and the sensation of unseen hands. The halls feel alive, responding to the movements and fears of those within. Visitors often describe a feeling of being watched. The sensation is subtle at first, a brush of air across the neck, a shift in temperature that chills the skin. Then comes the awareness that something is present, something observing from the edges of vision. The feeling is both terrifying and magnetic, compelling guests to explore further even as caution holds them back. The canyon below adds another layer of mystery. Its depth and darkness create a natural stage for the strange occurrences at the inn. Figures at the edge of cliffs, reflections in windows, and sounds carried on the wind all converge to make the location uniquely eerie. The landscape itself seems to participate in the hauntings, amplifying every sound and shadow. The inn's history contributes to its atmosphere. Guests have reported glimpses of past events. Fluctuations that feel as though time itself is bending. Shapes appear that resemble former visitors or staff, performing simple actions that disappear when acknowledged. These experiences are subtle, never graphic, but deeply affecting, leaving a sense of connection to a past that lingers unseen. Even mundane activities become charged with tension. A chair moving slightly, the creak of a floorboard, the flicker of a lighter, all are magnified in the stillness of the night. Each sound and movement seems to hint at a presence that exists alongside the living, sharing the space without ever fully revealing itself. Then becomes a theater of the unknown, where every corner may hold a secret and every shadow a story. Guests have spoken of cold spots that appear suddenly, freezing the air in a small radius around them. The effect is brief but intense, leaving shivers that linger long after the moment passes. Sometimes these chills coincide with other phenomena, doors swinging, footsteps echoing, or figures appearing at the edge of perception. The combination heightens the sense of mystery and presence throughout the inn. Canyon viewing is not a place for those seeking complete solitude. Its beauty is undeniable, yet every element of the building and its surroundings seems to hold echoes of the past. The corridors, the rooms, and the canyon itself all work together to create a living memory, a presence that cannot be ignored. Each visitor becomes part of this narrative, an unwitting participant in the ongoing story of the inn. The canyon's edge is a constant reminder of the natural world's influence. Figures appear silently against the backdrop of rock and shadow, standing motionless yet somehow present. The wind carries sounds that mimic voices, footsteps, and distant movement. The effect is subtle but pervasive, making every walk along the cliffs feel charged with unseen activity. Throughout the inn, the interplay of light and shadow is mesmerizing. Reflections in windows catch shapes that do not belong, and flickering lamps create shifting patterns on the walls. Even the smallest details become significant, hinting at the presence of those who linger beyond ordinary perception. The building itself seems attuned to the rhythm of unseen life, responding in subtle ways to the people who enter. Canyon viewing is a destination where beauty and mystery coexist. Guests leave with stories that blend awe and unease, recounting glimpses of figures, unexplained sounds, and moments when the environment feels alive. Every corridor, every door, every edge of the canyon holds potential for encounters that are both subtle and unforgettable. In the quiet moments before dawn, the inn becomes almost surreal. The canyon stretches endlessly below, shadows deepen, and the hallways are still yet charged with anticipation. Footsteps continue to echo, doors move without explanation, and ghostly figures linger in the distance. The atmosphere is tangible, a delicate balance of natural splendor and lingering presence. Canyon viewing remains a place where the past and present intersect. Its hallways and canyon edge hold memories that manifest in subtle ways, leaving a lasting impression on those who visit. The inn is both sanctuary and stage, where beauty, mystery, and the unseen converge into an experience that is unforgettable, immersive, and quietly haunting. Dustwind Motel sits alone along a remote highway, its neon sign flickering intermittently in the endless desert night. The building appears frozen in time, a relic of a past era, with weathered walls and a long row of rooms that stretch beneath the cold, star-strewn sky. The desert wind moves across the open landscape, carrying with it an eerie whisper that seems to seep into every corner of the motel. Guests often arrive seeking refuge from long drives, but the silence of the place can feel heavier than the desert heat. Inside, the rooms hold an unsettling stillness. Some visitors have woken to find figures sitting silently, their presence quiet yet overwhelming, seated at the edge of bed or lingering near the shadows of a room. These figures vanish when approached, leaving only the sense that they have always been there, waiting and watching. The desert wind flows through the empty spaces of the motel, slipping under doors and around corners. It carries whispers, faint but persistent, calling out in voices that hint at help or warning. The sound is never clear enough to understand fully, but it is unmistakable in its presence, like a secret shared across the expanse of sand and sky. Each gust feels purposeful, directing attention, stirring unease, and reminding visitors that the motel is not merely a structure, but a place alive with memory and intent. Shadowy hands are said to reach through windows, grasping and retreating as if testing the boundaries between the living and the unseen. The glass trembles, the air shifts, and a sudden chill spreads across the skin. Even when no figures are visible, the sensation remains, a subtle reminder that Dustwind Motel exists in a space between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The desert night deepens this sense of isolation, emphasizing the stark contrast between the silent wilderness outside and the restless energy inside. A sense of impending doom and madness hangs in the air as the character navigates the abandoned motel. Walking the hallways, visitors often notice the flicker of lights that have no visible source. Bulbs dim and flare unexpectedly, casting long, shifting shadows along peeling wallpaper and worn carpets. Doors creak open slowly and close with a force that seems too deliberate for the wind alone. Each sound and movement contributes to the atmosphere, creating a tension that is both palpable and hypnotic. The parking lot stretches empty beneath the cold moonlight, the asphalt reflecting the motel-esque fading neon. Vehicles sit as if abandoned, and the long row of rooms appears to watch silently. From certain angles, the motel seems to breathe, its walls and windows resonating with the presence of those who linger unseen. Even the smallest gesture, a curtain fluttering without wind, a shadow crossing a doorway, reinforce the feeling that Dustwind Motel is not just a building, but a keeper of stories and memories that refuse to fade. Visitors report waking to sounds that defy explanation. Soft footsteps echo along the hallways, though no one is there. Furniture shifts slightly, as if nudged by invisible hands. Whispers fill the air, faint and fragmented, repeating phrases that are never fully clear but unmistakably present. The motel seems to respond to those within it, reflecting fears, memories, or perhaps the restless energy of those who came before. The desert itself becomes part of the story. Wind sweeps across sand and rock, carrying with it a sense of desolation and eternity. It seems to interact with the motel, funneling whispers into rooms and hallways, shifting dust and patterns that suggest movement, and amplifying the subtle signs of presence that make guests question what is real. The stark beauty of the landscape contrasts with the intimate unease inside the walls, creating an atmosphere both alluring and unsettling. Night deepens and the motel grows colder. The figures, shadows, and whispers become more pronounced, as if the energy within is strongest when the world outside is quiet. A solitary light may flicker in a room down the hall, casting long, moving shadows. Doors may open or slam without cause, and the sensation of being watched intensifies. Visitors describe a feeling that the motel itself is alive, conscious, and aware of every movement, every breath, every hesitation. The rooms preserve traces of previous occupants. Personal items may appear misplaced, towels or furniture shifted slightly, and the air carries a faint, inexplicable chill. Some guests sense a presence hovering near the window, a silhouette that blends with the darkness outside, yet remains distinctly human in form. Whispers continue to rise and fall with the desert wind, sometimes seeming to call the names of those who enter, other times offering vague warnings that remain just beyond comprehension. Desert Mirage Motel is a place where time feels suspended. The past lingers in hallways, rooms, and empty parking lots. Intertwined with the desert night, figures drift silently through rooms. Shadowy hands reach through windows, and the wind carries stories that are never fully told. Every flicker of light, every unexplained sound, every subtle movement contributes to a narrative that is both haunting and compelling. A reminder that some places retain memory, and some memories never leave. The experience of staying at Desert Mirage Motel is immersive and unforgettable. Guests encounter a landscape where the ordinary world meets the extraordinary, where isolation and history converge, and where every corner holds the potential for the unseen. Figures sit silently in rooms. Shadows glide through hallways, and whispers ride the desert wind, leaving visitors with a lingering sense that Desert Mirage Motel is more than a stop along the highway. It is a living testament to the presence of the past, the persistence of memory, and the thin veil between the known and the unknown. Even as dawn approaches, the desert remains quiet and the motel appears unchanged. Yet the feeling of being observed, of walking among whispers and shadows, lingers long after the sun rises. Desert Mirage Motel holds its secrets close, inviting those who enter to witness a place where time, memory, and presence converge. A destination suspended between the natural world and the unseen, alive with stories that are impossible to forget. Lonely Road Lodge sits at the edge of the forest, a place where the trees crowd close and the wind seems to carry whispers. Guests often speak of feeling watched from the moment they arrive, a sensation that lingers as they park their cars and approach the lodge. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls, and the air is thick with a quiet tension, as if unseen eyes follow every movement. The entrance hall is dimly lit, with flickering lamps that cast long shadows across the floor. Corridors creak under invisible weight, the sound echoing through empty halls and stirring the imagination. Each step taken feels accompanied, the floorboards responding not just to the living, but to the presence of something else, something patient and observant. Rooms once rented seem never truly vacant. Visitors report objects shifting subtly, chairs slightly turned, doors closing gently on their own. Some feel the cold brush of unseen hands against their arms, a fleeting reminder that the lodge is alive with more than just the memories of past travelers. Whispers drift along hallways, sometimes urgent, sometimes soft, calling out names or speaking in voices that vanish as soon as they are noticed. At night, the lodge changes. The air becomes heavier, charged with the presence of the unknown. Footsteps are heard approaching doors, deliberate and unhurried, sometimes pausing just beyond the threshold. Guests awake to the sensation of being observed, their hearts racing. Their hearts racing as shadows stretch across the walls in patterns that feel intentional, as if guided by unseen watchers. The front desk remains pristine. Chairs sway gently as if someone invisible has been seated. Guests often pause. Upstairs, the hallways are narrow and lined with old wood. The floors carry sound in an eerie way, amplifying even the slightest creak into something that feels like a presence drawing near. Guests describe a tension that tightens with each step, a sense that the lodge itself is aware of every visitor, every heartbeat, every breath. Some rooms hold a deeper sense of history, occupied by unseen guests that never check out. Beds appear to have been slept in. Chairs are drawn close to tables, and belongings seem to have been moved, yet no one is visible. Cold spots appear without warning, chilling the air and leaving guests reaching for blankets they cannot find sufficient. Every detail is sharp, every sensation heightened, as if the lodge heightens awareness of both the seen and the unseen. As if the lodge heightens awareness of both the seen and the unseen. The soundscape of Lonely Road Lodge adds to its haunting presence. Wind whistles through cracks in windows, creating tones that resemble whispers. Floorboards groan under footsteps that are not your own. Doors open and close with no explanation, each movement deliberate, each sound a message sent from the shadows. Even silence feels weighted, as if the very air has learned to watch and wait. Guests often describe the experience as a slow unraveling of certainty. The lodge does not scream or strike, but it whispers, it watches, and it follows. Every corridor becomes a question, every room a possibility. The sensation of being observed never fully fades, lingering even as visitors leave, leaving them with a memory of presence that feels intimately personal and profoundly unsettling. The exterior of the lodge is no less compelling. Trees bend toward the building as if drawn by unseen hands, and the wind carries fragments of voices from distant rooms. The environment itself seems complicit, guiding visitors into a heightened awareness of the strange and inexplicable. The environment itself seems complicit, guiding visitors into a heightened awareness of strange and inexplicable. Even during daylight, the lodge retains its uncanny aura. Shadows cling in corners, the floors creak unexpectedly, and a sense of expectancy hangs in the air. Windows reflect more than the surrounding forest, sometimes catching glimpses of figures that vanish when attention is focused. Every detail contributes to an atmosphere that is immersive and enduring, a living memory of past and present, intertwined. Lonely Road Lodge is not violent or threatening, yet it commands attention. The presence felt here is patient, deliberate, and perceptive. It is a place where history and spirit coexist, where the echoes of previous guests linger and interact with the living. Each visit becomes a dialogue, a subtle interaction with what remains unseen but deeply felt. The lodge invites contemplation. Every creak, whisper, and shadow becomes part of a larger story, one told without words but through sensation and perception. Visitors leave with a sense of reverence and unease, carrying the memory of eyes that watched, footsteps that followed, and rooms that never truly emptied. Lonely Road Lodge endures through presence, observation, and subtle interaction. It is a place of memory, spirit, and lingering awareness. Shadows drift along corridors, whispers echo in empty rooms, and the unseen inhabit spaces once thought solely occupied by the living. Each encounter, each fleeting sensation, reinforces the understanding that the lodge is alive in its own mysterious way, quietly asserting that it is never truly empty and never truly alone. The Red Rockin' rests quietly at the base of jagged red cliffs, their surfaces glowing faintly under the setting sun. The building stands as a stark contrast to the rugged landscape, its sharp angles and empty windows giving it a sense of isolation. The desert wind moves through the surrounding canyons, carrying a faint, hollow whistle that seems to blend with the stillness of the inn itself. Guests have reported lights flickering in rooms that show no signs of occupancy. Lamps turn on and off with no apparent cause, and shadows stretch across walls as if moving of their own accord. Hallways are silent, yet there is a persistent sense of presence. Figures appear briefly at the end of corridors, standing still before vanishing when approached. The air carries a subtle chill, even when the sun beats down outside, hinting at an unseen world just beyond the tangible. The inn's pool area is particularly unsettling. During the day, the water glints blue and calm, reflecting the stark cliffs above. At night, the surface remains still, yet the echo of splashes can be heard, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from an empty pool. Guests have described the sound as both inviting and foreboding, as though something unseen moves beneath the water-esque glassy surface. The sensation of being watched is strongest here, and many avoid the pool area after dusk. Inside, the Red Rockin' feels frozen in time. There is life here of a different sort, subtle and persistent, manifesting in small movements, sounds, and the occasional glimpse of a shadowy figure. And a low hum of activity drifts through the hallways. It is a quiet, unrelenting presence that fills the space without revealing itself. Rooms once lively with laughter now sit in eerie silence. The desert air presses through cracked windows, carrying dust and the faint scent of earth. Some guests report feeling a sudden cold touch on their shoulders or the brushing of air that suggests a presence nearby. Even ordinary movements are amplified here. The creak of a floorboard or the shuffle of a chair can feel exaggerated, as if the inn itself responds to every sound. Even ordinary movements are amplified here. The creak of a floorboard or the shuffle of a chair can feel exaggerated, as if the inn itself responds to every sound. The inn's exterior offers no comfort. The desert around it amplifies every whisper of wind, every faint noise, creating a landscape that is both majestic and foreboding. Figures have been spotted moving along the outer walls, standing silently before disappearing behind the cliffs. Many visitors describe hallways where time seems distorted. A corridor may stretch farther than architecture allows, or doors lead into rooms that were never on a map. Lights flicker intermittently, casting dancing shadows that appear to follow, vanish, or double. Footsteps echo in spaces that should be empty, and whispers rise and fade without source. The sensation is disorienting, creating an awareness that the inn is more than a structure. It is a vessel for stories and presences that linger beyond human comprehension. Even during the day, the inn carries an atmosphere of tension. Windows reveal empty rooms and long corridors, and the stark red cliffs behind the building remind visitors of the isolation. The air is heavy, the light sharp, yet there is a subtle sense that the building is aware, watching, and waiting. Some describe the feeling as eyes tracking their movements, a silent acknowledgement of their presence. Every step, every glance carries the weight of something unseen, just out of reach but undeniably there. At night, the red rocket transforms further. The flickering lights, the ghostly figures in hallways, and the echoing splashes from the pool create an environment that is alive in its own way. Shadows stretch unnaturally across walls, doors open and close without wind. An occasional figure appears at a window or corridor, vanishing before full attention can be given. The desert outside presses in, amplifying every sound, every movement, and leaving a sense of isolation and awe that lingers long after one leaves the property. Visitors often leave with memories that feel more like impressions than reality. Flickering lights, shadows, whispers, and unseen touches create an experience that is both captivating and disquieting. The red rocket exists as a threshold between the ordinary and the extraordinary, where the landscape and the building itself hold secrets that refuse to fade. It is a place where the desert, the cliffs, and the inn converge, forming a setting for encounters that remain with those who witness them. The red rocket endures as a destination that fascinates and unsettles. Figures drift silently, lights flicker without cause, and ghostly echoes fill rooms and hallways. The pool, forever still, carries sound that suggests life where there is none. Every shadow, every whisper, every unexplained movement contributes to the atmosphere of mystery. The inn is more than an abandoned building. It is a living memory, a place where the past lingers, where the desert surrounds and watches, and where visitors leave forever changed by the presence that inhabits its walls. Twilight Desert Motel sits quietly at the edge of a barren landscape, its sun-bleached walls blending with the endless sand and rock. By day, it appears ordinary, a stop for travelers seeking rest along a lonely highway. As night falls, the atmosphere shifts. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls of the motel, moving independently of any light source. Hallways that seemed empty during the day take on a tense stillness, as if holding their breath. The desert wind carries a hushed murmur, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but growing in presence of those who linger. Guests have reported hearing whispers emanating from rooms left unoccupied. The sounds are faint yet deliberate, calling names, echoing across walls, and fading just when one turns to locate the source. Some visitors awaken to find their belongings rearranged. Chairs, suitcases, and personal items appear shifted, as though someone had moved through the room during the night. Doors are locked from the inside. Windows show no signs of entry, yet the evidence of movement remains. The sensation is disorienting, leaving an impression that the motel itself responds to the presence of its occupants. The architecture of Twilight Desert Motel contributes to its eerie energy. Narrow corridors connect rooms in an irregular pattern, with corners that seem to deepen shadows. And doors that creak with the slightest motion. Each sound resonates in the still desert air, amplifying the sense of isolation. The floors carry the echo of footsteps, sometimes matching the rhythm of a guest, and at other times moving independently. Windows overlooking the surrounding desert reflect more than the night sky. Guests have seen shapes lingering in reflections, figures that appear behind them when none exist, or silhouettes that vanish when approached. The desert outside is as much a character as the building itself. The wind shifts suddenly, carrying voices that cannot be traced to any living source. It flows across the sand, curling around the walls into the parking lot, as if animating the space with memories that linger beyond sight. The desert amplifies the subtle disturbances, creating an environment where every sound and movement feels charged with meaning. Nighttime reveals the full extent of the motel's peculiar energy. Hallways appear longer than they should, shadows twist across walls, and light from flickering bulbs dances unpredictably. Guests describe an awareness of being watched, the sensation of eyes tracing their movements even when the hallways are empty. These experiences are intangible yet persistent, creating an atmosphere of quiet unease that settles into the bones. Some visitors feel sudden chills, cold spots that appear without warning. These brief, intense drops in temperature often coincide with other disturbances, such as whispering voices, doors moving, or shadows shifting. The contrast with the desert heat outside makes the effect all the more pronounced, a reminder of a presence that exists beyond ordinary perception. Rooms themselves seem to hold memories. Guests speak of fleeting glimpses of past visitors. A chair rocking slightly, a suitcase opening and closing, a shadow moving just beyond the corner of vision. The motel seems to preserve these moments, echoing them into the present, allowing each new visitor to witness fragments of what has come before. The parking lot and exterior spaces also bear witness to strange occurrences. Vehicles appear to be shifted or moved slightly. Footprints appear in sand where none should exist. And the glow of distant lights sometimes forms shapes that vanish when approached. Even the desert beyond the motel feels charged with presence, as if the land itself remembers every traveler who has passed through. Twilight Desert Motel is not a place for complete solitude. Its beauty and simplicity by day contrast sharply with the tension and unease that emerges at night. Each hallway, each room, and each corridor holds potential for encounters that are subtle yet deeply affecting. The building becomes a living entity, responding to the movements, fears, and presence of those within. The interplay of shadow and light is continuous, creating an ever-shifting environment. Guests report the sensation of shapes forming in peripheral vision, reflections in windows that do not align with reality, and shadows that linger longer than physics would allow. The experience is immersive, drawing attention to every detail of the space, and amplifying the senses in ways that are both thrilling and unsettling. As the desert night deepens, the motel seems to breathe. Wind rustles through the open spaces. Doors move as if guided by unseen hands. Whispers continue to drift through hallways and rooms. The feeling of presence becomes more tangible, a quiet tension that heightens awareness and leaves a lasting impression long after morning arrives. Twilight Desert Motel is a location where the natural world and the unseen converge. The desert, the building, and the memories it holds create an environment that is both beautiful and mysterious. Guests leave with stories of fleeting figures, rearranged belongings, and moments when the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. It is a place where every shadow, every whisper, and every flicker of light carries significance. Each visitor becomes part of its ongoing narrative, contributing to the subtle yet undeniable presence that defines the motel. Twilight Desert Motel remains a space where mystery lingers in the desert air, and the ordinary becomes an unforgettable encounter with the unknown. Sandstone Suite stands alone along a desolate stretch of highway, its weathered walls blending with the ochre hues of the surrounding desert. The sun sets slowly, casting long shadows across the parking lot and illuminating the faded sign that creaks gently in the evening wind. The motel has an air of stillness, but beneath its quiet exterior, something lingers, subtle and persistent, waiting for those who wander too close. Visitors arrive seeking rest, but the experience is often unlike any other. Figures in faded uniforms have been glimpsed walking the halls, moving with measured steps as if on a duty long forgotten. They appear at the edges of vision, vanishing when observed directly, leaving only a sense of presence that is difficult to shake. The hallways themselves seem to respond, each creak of floorboards and whisper of the desert wind amplifying the feeling that Sandstone Suites is alive in ways that go beyond architecture. Visitors arrive seeking rest, but the experience is often unlike any other. Doors open and close on their own, shifting with no discernible cause. A hallway that moments ago seemed empty may suddenly echo with soft thud as a door swings inward or slams shut. The air grows colder in these moments, and a faint smell of desert dust mingles with a sense of anticipation, as if the building itself is observing and testing the patience of its occupants. These movements are subtle, never overtly threatening, but they leave a lasting impression of unease. Outside, the parking lot stretches empty under a sky scattered with stars. Whispers drift across the asphalt, calling names softly but insistently. They are not loud or alarming, but they carry a weight that draws attention, prompting visitors to turn their heads in search of a source that does not exist. The wind seems to carry the voices from nowhere, brushing past cars and desert scrub, making the ordinary surroundings feel uncanny and alive. Inside, the rooms preserve the history of countless travelers. Furniture is worn and time-worn, yet it holds a presence that cannot be explained. Guests have reported glimpsing shadows at the edge of the bed, figures seated silently, watching without motion, light flickers from electrical fixtures without cause, creating long, stretching shadows that move with the walls. Each moment inside Sandstone Suites blurs the boundary between the real and the imagined, and the desert beyond seems to echo the uncertainty within. Walking through the hallways, visitors notice subtle shifts in the atmosphere. The temperature drops inexplicably, and the stillness feels weighted, pressing softly against the senses. Footsteps can be heard where no one walks, and the whispering voices seem to shift closer with each step. The faded uniforms glimpsed in the corridors hint at stories of the past, of lives that once moved through these rooms with purpose, now lingering in quiet repetition. The motel's exterior reflects the isolation of its location. The desert stretches endlessly, in every direction. Wind sweeps across the landscape, carrying sound that seem almost alive, enhancing the sensation that the motel itself communicates with the emptiness around it. Shadows move in corners where the eye should see nothing, and the interplay of light and dark makes familiar spaces feel strange and unfamiliar. At night, Sandstone Suites transforms into a space where time feels suspended. Figures drift silently through hallways, doors open and close without explanation, and whispers continue to echo across the parking lot. Each room holds traces of past occupants, and visitors often sense an unseen presence observing their every move. The desert wind interacts with the building, stirring dust and amplifying the sounds of subtle activity, creating a layered experience that is both atmospheric and haunting. Guests describe sensations that defy easy explanation. A hand might brush lightly against an arm. A chair may shift slightly, and the soft murmur of voices persists even when all is still. The motel seems to respond to movement and attention, reflecting fears, memories, or perhaps the echoes of lives that once passed through its doors. Every detail, from the creaking of floorboards to the flicker of lights, contributes to the overarching sense that Sandstone Suites is a place where the boundary between the living and the unseen is thin and permeable. The motel preserves an uneasy beauty. Its faded walls and quiet corners invite exploration, yet caution lingers in the air. Visitors feel simultaneously drawn to and unsettled by the spaces within, aware that the desert outside conceals as much as the building itself. Each step through hallways, each glance down an empty corridor, reinforces a sensation of being part of something larger, a continuum of presence and memory that stretches beyond the limits of perception. Sandstone Suites is more than a stop along a lonely highway. It is a destination where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, where isolation amplifies the sense of presence, and where every whispered name, flickering light, and shadowed figure tells a story of lingering energy. Guests leave with a lasting impression, a memory of a place where history, solitude, and the unseen converge, a motel alive with quiet echoes that continue to call out long after the desert sun rises and the highway stretches on beyond sight. Mirage Motel stands on the outskirts of the desert, a place that seems ordinary by day yet transforms when night falls. Guests speak of reflections in mirrors that do not belong to anyone present, fleeting images of figures lingering just beyond recognition. The glass captures movements that vanish when looked at directly, leaving only a sense of being observed by something unseen. Corridors stretch long and narrow, dimly lit by flickering bulbs that cast uncertain shadows across the floor. Each step taken feels accompanied, as if the building itself listens and responds, carrying the weight of past presences. Rooms hold secrets that reveal themselves in subtle ways. Some visitors discover messages scrawled on walls in haste, only to find them vanish by morning. The air carries an almost tangible charge, a sensation that lingers on the skin and settles in the corners of the mind. The motel seems to be aware of every movement, every breath, every flicker of hesitation. At night, the atmosphere becomes dense and heavy. Shadows gather in corners, stretching along walls as if guided by an unseen hand. Guests report a coldness that appears suddenly, brushing past them like a fleeting presence. Whispers float through the air, faint and indistinct, often calling names or murmuring words that vanish before comprehension. The lobby itself tells stories without speaking. Chairs shift slightly, the floorboards groan under weight that is never present, and the lights flicker as though hesitating between states. Mirrors reflect more than the room in front of them, capturing silhouettes and movements that defy explanation. Each reflection adds to the sense that Mirage Motel exists simultaneously in multiple realities, where the living and the unseen coexist. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, its silence amplified by the isolation of the motel. The wind carries a strange resonance, echoing against walls and through empty parking spaces. Lights from distant towns barely reach here, leaving the motel shrouded in shadow and uncertainty. Each night brings a heightened awareness of surrounding emptiness, making the unexplained occurrences within the building all the more intense. Guests often describe a sensation of being followed, not by a person but by the memory of someone long gone. Footsteps mimic their movements. Whispers trace their paths. And cold spots appear in rooms that should be empty. The motel seems to layer the past upon the present, allowing moments long since ended to repeat and interact with the living. Hallways take on a life of their own at night. Doors that were closed slowly creak open, letting in current of cold air. Mirrors along the walls reflect not just a corridor, but a presence behind the glass that disappears when faced directly. Every sound is amplified, every shadow becomes suspect, and every step carries the tension of the unseen pressing close. Visitors frequently speak of the rooms where the most vivid phenomena occur. Lights flicker in rhythm with unexplainable movements. Objects shift slightly from their original positions, and the mirrors show glimpses of figures that vanish the moment attention is focused. It is in these moments that the motel reveals itself fully, a space alive with unseen histories and quiet, persistent activity. Even during the day, Mirage Motel exerts a subtle influence. Shadows seem to cling a little longer. Floorboards respond to imagined weight. Reflections and mirrors flicker unexpectedly. The feeling of being observed never fully leaves. In half-heard noises, and in the fleeting chill that brushes against the skin, the motel's exterior contributes to its eerie presence. The neon sign buzzes faintly, casting an uneven glow across cracked asphalt and desert sand. Windows appear dark, yet movement can be glimpsed within, figures crossing hallways or pausing at doors. The surrounding landscape amplifies the isolation, enhancing the awareness that here, the normal rules of presence and absence do not fully apply. Mirage Motel does not rush its visitors or demand attention. Instead, it interacts subtly, layering sensations, reflections, and sounds to create an experience that is immersive and disorienting. Every guest becomes part of its ongoing story. Whether they are aware of it or not, leaving with a memory that lingers long after departure. Leaving with a memory that lingers long after departure. The building holds history, layers of unseen occupants, and echoes of events long past. It is patient, observing and deliberate, never aggressive but profoundly present. Each corridor, room, and mirror contributes to a web of sensations that are at once beautiful and unsettling, inviting reflection, curiosity, and cautious exploration. Mirage Motel endures as a place of lingering presence and quiet mystery. Shadows drift along the halls, footsteps echo without origin, and messages appear and vanish without explanation. Every visit becomes a delicate balance between the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknowable, leaving an indelible mark on all who pass through its doors. The cactus bloom and rises from the desert floor, its adobe walls glowing faintly under the light of a waxing moon. The inn seems ordinary at first, yet there is an undeniable sense that it is alive in a way the surrounding desert is not. Shadows cling to the corners of hallways, stretching and twisting, as if moving of their own accord. Night brings a chill that cuts through even the warmth of summer. The air becomes heavy and still, pressing against walls and windows. Guests report feeling sudden drops in temperature in certain rooms, as if the building itself breathes with a cold, invisible rhythm. The desert beyond the inn is silent, yet it seems to hum faintly, carrying distant whispers and an almost musical undertone that drifts through the open windows. Figures appear along hallways, their forms indistinct and ever-changing. They drift past doors, pause at the ends of corridors, and vanish before anyone can fully confront them. Their presence is subtle but persistent, a quiet weight that presses against the senses. Guests feel watched, as if unseen eyes follow every step and listen to every movement. Even in crowded spaces, the inn manages to isolate each visitor, wrapping them in an atmosphere of anticipation and unease. Doors open and close without warning. Walls shiver under invisible touches. And at times, a hand seems to graze the shoulder of a passing guest. The sensations are fleeting yet unmistakable, leaving a lingering awareness that something unseen inhabits the space. The faint sound of music drifts from the desert at irregular intervals, soft and haunting, as though instruments long forgotten are being played by unseen hands. It carries a melancholy tone, one that resonates with the history embedded within the inn and the land surrounding it. The cactus bloom is more than a building. It is a vessel for memories, echoes, and presences that refuse to be ignored. Hallways curve and stretch in ways that seem impossible. Rooms appear where they were not expected, and lights flicker without explanation. Furniture creaks in empty spaces, and the faint scent of earth and desert blooms clings to the air, enhancing the sense that the inn and the landscape are intertwined, both steeped in mystery. Visitors describe a sense of time that behaves unpredictably. Minutes stretch, then collapse. Events are remembered with clarity, yet feel distant, as if seen through a haze. Hallways that were once familiar transform upon returning, their angles shifting subtly, doors leading to spaces never explored. The inn seems aware of those who enter, responding in quiet, almost imperceptible ways that suggest it has a consciousness of its own. Outside, the desert looms as both protector and companion. Cacti cast long, eerie shadows across the grounds, and the wind moves through the brush with a soft, whispering voice. Figures are sometimes glimpsed just beyond the windows, motionless yet undeniably present, standing among the spiny silhouettes of the desert plants. Their presence is fleeting, yet it reinforces the inn's reputation as a place where the boundary between the natural and the supernatural is thin. The inn's interior holds its own mysteries. Lights flicker along hallways, casting dancing shadows that create the illusion of movement, even in the absence of any figure. Soft, indistinct sounds echo through the walls, resembling the faint hum of conversation or the delicate strum of stringed instruments. Guests have reported hearing footsteps following them, only to vanish when they turn to look. Doors that were firmly closed swing open slowly, as though inviting exploration or warning against intrusion. Rooms that seem ordinary by day transform at night into spaces filled with tension and anticipation. The chill deepens, and the subtle music from the desert grows stronger, carrying with it a sense of melancholy and longing. The inn feels alive with memory, with the presence of travelers long gone, their echoes lingering in the spaces they once occupied. Guests sense these presences without ever seeing them fully, leaving an impression that stays long after departure. The pool area and garden, usually tranquil, take on an unsettling quality after sunset. Shadows appear to move across the water and among the desert flora. A sudden touch on the arm, a fleeting glance at the periphery of vision, a whisper that seems carried on the wind of these moments are shared by many, yet never fully understood. The inn creates an experience that is immersive and enigmatic, blending the natural beauty of the desert with a palpable sense of the unknown. By morning, the cactus bloom and appears peaceful and ordinary once again. Sunlight warms the adobe walls, and the desert air feels calm and dry, yet the experiences of the night linger in memory. Hallways retain their subtle distortions. Shadows seem to flicker at the corner of vision, and the faint sound of distant music continues to echo in the minds of those who spent the night. The inn remains a place where time, presence, and the unseen converge, offering a hauntingly beautiful experience for those who dare to explore it. The cactus bloom and endures as a location where the natural and supernatural meet. Figures drift silently, doors respond without cause, and the music of the desert create an atmosphere of quiet wonder and unease. Guests leave with a sense of being touched by something beyond the ordinary, their memories filled with shadows, whispers, and fleeting presences. The inn stands as a sentinel in the desert, a place of stories and secrets, where the unseen watches, waits, and leaves an indelible mark on all who pass through its doors. Starlight Motel stands alone on the edge of the desert, its neon sign flickering with an eerie glow that seems to defy the night. Even when the power is cut, the light hums faintly, casting a surreal illumination across the empty parking lot. The building is weathered, its paint sun-bleached and peeling, yet it holds a presence that is impossible to ignore. Guests arrive seeking a quiet place to rest, drawn by the lonely glow on a desert highway. During the day, the motel appears ordinary, a place of solitude and stillness. But as the sun dips below the horizon, the atmosphere shifts. Shadows stretch unnaturally across walls and parking spaces, and the air becomes heavy with a silence that is almost tangible. Figures are said to appear at the doors of rooms, standing motionless and silent, disappearing when looked at directly, a quiet reminder that the motel is not as empty as it seems, sometimes matching the rhythm of a guest, and other times moving independently. The exact script text for this scene. The desert wind carries whispers that chill the bone, drifting across the parking lot and through open windows. They are faint, almost impossible to locate, but those who hear them cannot ignore the sensation of attention. Names, half-formed phrases, and sighs seem to float through the night air, as if the motel itself remembers those who have come and gone. Inside, the rooms hold a quiet tension. Guests have reported waking to find objects subtly shifted, chairs slightly moved, or personal items repositioned. Nothing is broken. No doors appear forced, yet the evidence of presence is undeniable. The architecture of Starlight Motel contributes to its eerie energy. Narrow corridors and long hallways create shadows that twist and lengthen, corners that seem deeper than they are, and rooms that feel larger than their dimensions suggest. Each creaking floorboard, each subtle shift of air, carries meaning in the stillness. The building becomes a living entity, responding to the presence of those within in ways both subtle and unnerving. Windows overlooking the desert reflect more than the night sky. Guests report seeing shapes lingering in reflections, silhouettes that vanish when approached, and faint movements in rooms that appear empty. These glimpses are fleeting, but they leave a lasting impression, reinforcing the sense that Starlight Motel is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist. The desert outside amplifies the motel's mysterious energy. The wind can rise suddenly, shifting sand across the parking lot, carrying voices that cannot be traced to any living source. The landscape itself seems charged with memory, every gust and shadow echoing with the passage of those who have traveled this lonely highway before. Nighttime at Starlight Motel blurs the boundary between the natural and the unseen, creating an environment where every sound and movement feels charged with meaning. Guests often describe cold spots, sudden chills that appear without warning, and a feeling of being watched even in empty rooms. The contrast with the desert heat outside makes the experience all the more disorienting, reinforcing the sense that something unseen is near. The motel itself seems to hold memories of past visitors. Guests speak of glimpsing figures performing mundane actions, shapes that vanish when observed directly, and fleeting impressions of lives once lived within these walls. Each new visitor becomes part of this ongoing narrative, interacting with echoes of the past in ways that are subtle but profound. Even the exterior spaces are alive with subtle disturbances. Footprints appear in sand where none should exist. Vehicles seem shifted, and distant lights form shapes that vanish upon approach. The desert amplifies these occurrences, creating an atmosphere where every movement, every sound, and every flicker of light feels significant. Night deepens, and the motel seems to breathe with its own rhythm. Doors creak softly, hallways extend into shadow, and whispers float through corridors and rooms. Guests feel a cold presence beside them in bed, a fleeting sensation of being observed and remembered. The experience is immersive, a delicate interplay of light, shadow, sound, and perception that leaves a lasting impression. Starlight Motel is a place where the desert, the building, and the memories it holds converge. It is both beautiful and unsettling, ordinary in its appearance yet extraordinary in its energy. Visitors leave with stories of figures at doors, whispers in the wind, rearranged belongings in moments when the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every chill carries meaning. Each visitor becomes part of the Motella-esque continuing story, contributing to the subtle yet undeniable presence that defines this desert haven. Starlight Motel remains a space where mystery lingers under the neon glow, and the desert night holds secrets that cannot be ignored. Rusted Spur Lodge stands quietly amid overgrown trails and weathered trees, its wooden beams darkened by decades of sun, wind, and snow. The lodge has been abandoned since the 1970s, yet exudes a presence that defies time, a lingering energy that draws the curious and unsettles the unwary. The building is heavy with silence, but that silence is far from empty, carrying with it whispers of the past and shadows that seem to move just beyond the edge of sight. Walking through the entrance, visitors notice the floorboards creak underfoot, responding to steps that are not their own. The long hallways stretch outward like veins of memory, each room a vessel of time frozen yet alive. Figures wander silently along these corridors, their movements subtle and deliberate, disappearing when approached. There is no malice in their presence, only the quiet repetition of lives once lived, replayed in the stillness of Rusted Spur Lodge. Doors open and slam without cause, moving as though pushed by invisible hands. A gust of wind might carry them momentarily, yet many rooms lie deep within the lodge, far from any source of draft. The sound reverberates through the hallways, a startling punctuation in the otherwise hushed building. Each slam reminds visitors that this place does not fully belong to the living, and that it holds its own rhythm and will, separate from the outside world. Cold spots appear without warning, seizing the air around visitors and chilling the skin. Some feel the icy touch of unseen hands, fleeting yet unmistakable, tracing along shoulders or brushing across the back. These sensations are sudden and intimate, as if the lodge itself is aware of every movement, responding silently to each step taken through its halls. The feeling is never violent, but it is persistent, leaving an impression that lingers long after the encounter. The interior of Rusted Spur Lodge speaks of its history. Furniture remains where it was left, aged and dust-laden, holding the outlines of the lives it once supported. Chairs are worn from countless evenings by the fireplace, tables marked by the weight of meals and conversations long faded. Each object carries a subtle energy, a memory of those who occupied these spaces, now entwined with a strange presence that still lingers. The lodge is framed by the wilderness outside, where trees sway in the wind and shadows lengthen as the sun dips below the horizon. From the windows, the surrounding landscape seems empty, yet the lodge's activity suggests that emptiness is an illusion. Figures can sometimes be glimpsed at the edges of the rooms, standing silently or moving with careful deliberation, as though retracing steps long forgotten. Their presence is quiet, yet undeniably there, a spectral echo of the past woven into the fabric of the building. Visiting the upper floors, one becomes aware of subtle changes in light and sound. Shadows lengthen and shift even without the Suna-esque movement. Soft murmurs drift through the hallways, whispering from room to room, faint but persistent. The lodge seems to breathe with its own rhythm, guiding visitors along hallways that appear familiar yet unfamiliar, blending past and present in ways that defy explanation. The atmosphere grows heavier as night falls, thickening with anticipation. Floorboards groan underfoot, without footsteps, and the occasional slam of a door echoes like a heartbeat through empty corridors. Guests describe sensations of being watched, of energy brushing past them. Yet when they turn, there is no one to meet their gaze. The lodge communicates silently, not through speech, but through the sensation of being within a space that holds memories, experiences, and presences beyond the visible. The rusted spur lodge preserves a haunting beauty. Its wooden walls and fireplaces, though decayed and weathered, remain steadfast, containing the echoes of laughter, conversation, and life long past. Visitors often find themselves pausing in hallways, drawn to the subtle shift of a shadow, the flicker of light across a doorway, or the whisper of movement behind them. Each detail contributes to a narrative that is both tangible and intangible, a story told through presence rather than words. A story told through presence rather than words. Time inside the lodge seems suspended. Moments stretch and fold, blending the ordinary with the extraordinary. Figures wander silently, doors move of their own accord. And cold touches remind guests that Rusted Spur Lodge is more than a relic of the past. It is a space where the unseen continues to exist, where history and memory intermingle, and where every visitor becomes part of an ongoing story written in the language of atmosphere, sensation, and shadow. Written in the language of atmosphere, sensation, and shadow. By the time one leaves, the lodge has already begun to fade behind the trees. The creak of floorboards, the slam of a door, the whisper of movement in an empty room, all remain etched in the mind. Rusted Spur Lodge is a place that will continue long after the last visitor has gone. Here, in the quiet stillness of abandonment, the Rusted Spur Lodge endures. Figures move, whispers echo, and the icy touch of the past reminds those who enter that some places never truly die, and that the history they hold continues to breathe through the walls, through the halls, and through the air itself, waiting for the next visitor to step quietly into its shadowed embrace. Whispering Pines Motel sits quietly at the edge of the desert, an unusual oasis framed by towering pine trees that seem out of place in the arid landscape. The soft rustle of needles in the wind creates a constant undertone, a subtle sound that guests say carries more than the usual movement of branches. It is here that whispers have become a defining feature, drifting through the trees and along dimly lit hallways, speaking to those who listen closely. At night, the motel takes on a different character. Shadows stretch across the walls, elongating and twisting as if alive. Guests often notice fleeting figures that vanish as soon as they turn their heads, appearing in hallways or reflected in mirrors for a moment before disappearing completely. The air grows heavy with anticipation, a charged presence that is both unsettling and compelling. Corridors are lined with doors to rooms that seem ordinary, yet the quiet is deceptive. Footsteps echo in spaces that are unoccupied, and occasional cold spots brush across the skin, leaving a tingling sensation that cannot be explained. Some have reported seeing shapes pass through walls. leaving behind only the faintest disturbance in the air, as if the building itself allows glimpses into another layer of reality. The lobby at Whispering Pines Motel is modest, with worn furniture and muted lighting, yet it holds an air of quiet tension. Guests describe an uneasy feeling when seated, as though eyes are following them from unseen corners. Mirrors capture more than reflection, sometimes revealing silhouettes that are not present in the room. Figures that linger only long enough to be noticed and then vanish without a trace. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, yet the pines create a corridor of shade and shadow. The wind carries whispers through the needles, indistinct but unmistakable, seeming to speak directly to those who wander near the trees. Some say the voices repeat fragments of conversations. Others hear their own names, yet all experience the same sense of being observed by a presence both patient and aware. Rooms hold a particular energy, often strongest during the late hours. Lights flicker without reason, doors close softly on their own, and objects subtly shift from one place to another. Guests sometimes wait to find belongings rearranged or small items moved, evidence of an invisible inhabitant. The atmosphere is heavy with expectation, a quiet pressure that draws attention to every sound, every shadow, every movement of air. Every movement of air. Guests sometimes wait to find belongings rearranged or small items moved, evidence of an invisible inhabitant. The atmosphere is heavy with expectation, a quiet pressure that draws attention to every sound, every shadow, every movement of air. 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 Whispering Pines Motel is not aggressive in its manifestations. Instead, it is patient, revealing itself slowly through subtle disturbances and fleeting glimpses. Figures appear at the edge of vision, reflected in mirrors or vanishing into walls, leaving guests with a lingering impression of being not entirely alone. The combination of natural beauty and eerie activity creates an environment that is at once serene and unsettling, inviting exploration while maintaining a palpable tension. The surrounding pine trees contribute to the motel's mysterious presence. Branches sway, casting moving shadows that play across walls and walkways. And the wind carries whispers that seem to originate both outside and within the building. Guests often feel a connection between the rustling trees and the sounds within the motel, as though the property itself is alive, aware of every movement and every thought. Even in the daylight, Whispering Pines Motel retains an unusual atmosphere. The light filtering through the pines creates patterns that shift across floors and walls, and the quiet hum of the desert underscores an almost imperceptible tension. Guests notice a heightened awareness of their surroundings, an instinctive feeling that something is watching or waiting, patient and deliberate. The history of the motel adds layers to its mysterious reputation. Each room, hallway, and common area carries the weight of countless stories, whispered and unspoken. Visitors feel as if the past is embedded within the walls, a residue of lives once lived and experiences long gone, but not forgotten. The building seems to bridge time, allowing moments from the past to linger alongside the present. At night, the combination of silence, shadows, and subtle movement creates a cinematic environment. Figures appear fleetingly in hallways, vanish behind corners, or are glimpsed in the dim reflection of mirrors. Whispers travel through corridors and along the pines outside, sometimes coherent, sometimes fractured, leaving guests questioning whether the sounds are imagined or real. The air grows colder in certain spots, brushing against the skin in ways that cannot be accounted for, further deepening the sense of otherworldly presence. Guests describe experiences that are difficult to forget, shapes that drift along the edges of vision, whispers that seem to follow from room to room. The sensation of being watched, combine to create a persistent awareness of the unseen. The motel operates quietly but decisively, drawing attention to itself through subtle but undeniable signs, shaping the experience of every visitor who crosses its threshold. Whispering Pines Motel endures as a place of layered presence and quiet mystery. Pine trees sway with whispered voices. Hallways stretch with shifting shadows. And mirrors reflect more than they should. Figures appear and vanish. Footsteps echo where none should be. And cold spots mark the presence of something unseen. Each night, the motel weaves together the natural and supernatural, creating an environment that is both captivating and unsettling, leaving a lasting impression on all who wander its corridors and grounds. The Dust Devil stands alone on a remote stretch of highway, its weathered facade blending into the arid landscape. The building seems almost suspended in time, a relic from an era when travelers sought rest in isolated stops along the road. By day, the inn appears quiet, sun-baked, and lifeless. Yet as night falls, an unsettling presence begins to take shape. An unsettling presence begins to take shape. A chill seeps into the air, heavier than the desert wind, carrying with it a sense of anticipation and unease. Guests, though few, report hearing footsteps above them, slow and deliberate, echoing across the roof and upper floors. The inn has long been abandoned, yet the sounds persist as if the building itself is moving and breathing. Shadowy figures appear at windows, still and silent. Their presence is fleeting, glimpsed only from the corner of vision, yet unmistakable. Even in the stillness of the desert night, the inn exerts a quiet authority over its surroundings. The interior is just as strange as the exterior suggests. Shadows twist and lengthen along the walls, as if the light itself is being manipulated by an unseen force. The atmosphere is thick with tension, drawing visitors into a slow, deliberate awareness of their surroundings. Visitors often hear whispers carried on the wind. These are soft, almost imperceptible, yet distinct enough to make the hairs on the neck stand on end. The whispers seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, following guests through hallways and across rooms. Some claim to hear voices calling their names, distant and distorted, leaving an impression that something unseen is actively engaging with them. The inn seems to exist in its own temporal rhythm. Night stretches and folds in unusual ways. Moments feel prolonged, as if the building has the ability to manipulate time for those within it. Guests report sudden feelings of dizziness or disorientation, followed by periods of eerie calm. It is as though the Dust Devil shapes the experience of time and space, drawing those inside into a reality slightly askew from the world beyond its walls. Lights flicker intermittently, cutting through darkness with an unsteady glow. The illumination reveals fleeting glimpses of rooms that appear furnished yet deserted. Chairs are slightly askew, curtains sway as though moved by a phantom breeze, and the floors sometimes creak under weight that cannot be seen. Every movement feels purposeful, as if the building is alive, aware of every step, every sound. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, yet the inn dominates the landscape. The wind rises and falls with an almost sentient cadence, carrying grains of sand across windows and porches. Figures occasionally drift across the threshold of vision beyond the property line, disappearing when approached. Even the environment seems to bend toward the inn, amplifying its isolation and its quiet, insistent presence. The Dust Devil holds an unspoken history, one preserved in the air, the floors, and the walls. Guests sense layers of past events, moments imprinted onto the building. The echoes of former visitors, travelers long gone, seem to linger, woven into the fabric of the structure itself. Hallways hum faintly with energy, and certain rooms retain an almost magnetic quality, drawing guests toward them despite apprehension or fear. As the night deepens, the inner-S phenomena grow more pronounced. Footsteps on the roof become more distinct. Shadows shift with purpose, and the whispers grow clearer, sometimes forming coherent phrases before fading into silence. The building is not violent, yet its presence is commanding, instilling both awe and apprehension in those who wander its corridors. Every creak of a floorboard, every subtle gust of air, serves as a reminder that the Dust Devil is not simply a place, but an experience, a living entity intertwined with the desolation around it. that the dust devil is not simply a place, but an experience, a living entity intertwined with the desolation around it. By dawn, the inn seems to settle back into stillness. The sun warms the exterior walls, and for a brief moment, the building resembles nothing more than a quiet, forgotten inn. Yet the memories of the night remain vivid for those who dared to enter. Guests leave with impressions of figures seen and unseen, sounds that cannot be explained, and the undeniable sense that the dust devil inn continues to watch, waiting for the next traveler to cross its threshold. The dust devil inn endures as a testament to the unseen, a place where the boundary between the living and the spectral is thin. It stands sentinel over the desert highway, a silent observer and participant in the lives of those who venture close. Every corner, every hallway, and every flickering light tells a story, leaving a lingering mark on the mind and the imagination. Those who encounter it are forever changed, carrying the experience with them, knowing that in the quiet of the desert, the dust devil remains, waiting and watching with patience that only centuries could cultivate. Sunburn Motel sits isolated along a sun-scorched highway, its faded exterior reflecting decades of heat and neglect. During the day, the building appears ordinary, a place where travelers pause to rest, the pool shimmering under the relentless sun. The air is warm, still, and seemingly peaceful, giving little indication of what emerges when night falls. As darkness descends, the motel transforms. Hallways that were quiet and empty during the day become alive with whispers. The voices are faint, carried on a breeze that seems to move through walls and doors, yet impossible to locate. They are murmurs that stir unease, as if the building itself remembers the people who once filled its rooms. Guests feel the weight of attention, a subtle sense of being observed even when no one is in sight. Figures appear at the edges of vision, ghostly silhouettes that linger in empty rooms. Some are seen sitting by the pool, their presence still and watchful, blending with the moonlit water as though waiting for someone who will never arrive. Others drift silently through the hallways, vanishing when approached. Their movements are slow and deliberate, leaving behind a trace of cold air, a hint that the living are not alone. The Motella-esque architecture amplifies the sense of unease. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the guest's own steps, sometimes independent. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the guest's own steps, sometimes independent, following or preceding in a way that is unsettlingly precise. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the guest's own steps, sometimes independent, following or preceding in a way that is unsettlingly precise. The walls seem to carry memory. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the guest's own steps, sometimes independent, following or preceding in a way that is unsettlingly precise. The walls seem to carry memory. Every creak and sigh a reminder of the Motella-esque past. Narrow corridors stretch into darkness, corners deep in shadows, and doors seem to close themselves for no reason. Footsteps echo along the worn floorboards, sometimes in rhythm with the guest's own steps, sometimes independent, following or preceding a way that is unsettlingly precise. The walls seem to carry memory. Every creak and sigh a reminder of the Motella-esque past and the people who have walked these halls. The rooms themselves are filled with subtle disturbances. Guests report objects shifted slightly, chairs angled differently, and personal items moved without explanation. Nothing is broken, nothing forced, yet the evidence of presence is unmistakable. The air grows colder in moments, sudden chills that settle around the shoulders, around the neck, leaving an unmistakable impression of being near something unseen. The pool area is particularly enigmatic at night. The water, still under the moon, sometimes ripples without wind, as if something's just moved beneath the surface. Ghostly figures sit on the edges or float just out of reach, their forms half visible, shimmering in the dim light. It is a place where the ordinary recreation of daytime transforms into a scene of lingering memories and silent watchers. Outside, the desert air carries whispers across the empty parking lot and the surrounding sands. Names are called softly. Indistinct phrases float through the night, and the wind seems to bend around the building in unnatural ways. It is as if the motel itself is alive, responding to the presence of guests and the weight of its own history. Every sound and every flicker of light feels meaningful, charged with the past and present intertwined. The motel-esque silence is deceptive. Shadows linger longer than they should. Lights flicker unexpectedly. And the feeling of being watched intensifies when one is alone. Guests speak of fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures, in rooms that have been empty for years, of cold touches brushing their shoulders, and of footsteps echoing through hallways that should have been empty. The sense of presence is subtle, almost respectful, yet impossible to ignore. Even during the quietest hours of night, the building seems to breathe a rhythm of its own. Doors creak softly, windows catch the reflection of unseen shapes, and the pool reflects forms that are not there. Every corner, every shadow, every ripple of sound is part of a narrative that has been unfolding long before any visitor arrived. The motel holds memories, both light and dark, creating an atmosphere where history is never truly gone. Guests leave Sunburn Motel carrying impressions that linger long after they have departed. The experience is not one of terror, but a quiet unease, of awareness that the place is alive. Of awareness that the place is alive with its own stories, every whisper, every shadow. Every whisper, every shadow, every flicker of light reinforces a presence. Reinforces a presence that endures within these walls, a subtle reminder that the motel exists in a space between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Sunburn Motel is more than a stop along a highway. It is a witness to countless arrivals and departures, a keeper of memories, and a silent observer of the lives that pass through it. At night, it becomes a place where reality and lingering echoes intersect, where ghostly guests watch, wait, and move through corridors and rooms that were once filled with life. The desert wind continues to carry faint whispers across the parking lot, and the pool shimmers under the moonlight, reflecting not just the stars, but the presence of those who are no longer seen. Hallways stretch into shadow, doors shift subtly, and the air grows colder as the motel remembers and observes, a silent guardian of the past and a quiet companion to every visitor who dares to stay. Sunburn Motel endures, a solitary structure where the ordinary is touched by the mysterious, where whispers carry stories across empty rooms, and where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. Where the ordinary is touched by the mysterious, where whispers carry stories across empty rooms, and where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. Where whispers carry stories across empty rooms, and where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. Where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. And where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. Where every guest becomes part of a long, ongoing narrative that lingers long after sunrise. Blood Moon and stands quietly along a lonely stretch of road, its red-tinted neon sign casting a strange, flickering glow across the empty parking lot. The building seems ordinary by day, with peeling paint and worn wooden beams, yet by night it transforms into a place alive with unseen activity. Shadows move along the hallways, and figures appear at doorways only to vanish as quickly as they emerge, leaving behind a sense of being watched, of unseen presence lingering in every corner. Guests arriving after dark often notice the silence then feels heavy, almost deliberate. Each step on the creaking floorboards echoes through the hallways, yet it is never certain whether the sound comes from the visitor or something that follows unseen. Footprints appear in dust and mud, small depressions that vanish moments later, hinting at movement that defies explanation. There's a rhythm to the place, a subtle cadence of presence and absence that lingers in the mind long after the first encounter. The inn is alive with whispers that drift through empty rooms and down the corridors. Visitors often report hearing their names spoken softly, carried across the air by a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound is intimate, insistent, and impossible to locate. It rises and falls with the flicker of the neon light, blending with the natural sounds of the building, until one is left unsure whether the whispers are imagined or real. The interior of blood. Furniture is worn and dust-covered, carrying impressions of lives once lived within these walls. Chairs remain where they were left decades ago. Tables are scarred from meals and conversations now long forgotten. Each object seems imbued with the memory of those who passed through, intertwined with the subtle energy that now defines the inn. Every detail contributes to an atmosphere that is as unsettling as it is compelling. Walking through the hallways, one becomes aware of sudden temperature shifts. Cold spots appear without warning, brushing across the skin like an icy hand. The sensation is fleeting yet unmistakable, a reminder that the inn is more than a structure of wood and stone. The air itself seems charged with presence, reacting to every movement, every sound. Visitors often pause, feeling the building watch and respond, its history and mystery merging into a palpable tension that clings to the senses. Figures move silently within the rooms. At times they are glimpsed of the edges of vision, fleeting and indistinct, disappearing when confronted. Their presence is subtle, a quiet echo of past lives, replaying within the walls. Some stand in doorways, seemingly waiting or observing, while others drift along the hallways, never breaking the rhythm of their invisible wandering. These encounters are not violent, but they are persistent, a constant reminder that blood moon exists on a boundary between the ordinary and the supernatural. Doors throughout them behave unpredictably, sometimes slowly, other times with sudden force. The sounds startle visitors, yet they are part of the innate rhythm of the place. Each slam, each movement, reinforces the presence of forces that are unseen yet undeniably active, guiding the energy of the inn and maintaining its haunting atmosphere. The windows of the inn frame the outside world in eerie red hues from a neon sign, casting long, shifting shadows across empty rooms and hallways. The glow transforms ordinary corners into spaces of tension and anticipation, where imagination and reality blend. Figures can sometimes be seen framed in this light, standing silently before vanishing into walls or fading into darkness. Every glance out a window is a reminder that the inn is never truly empty, and that each night brings its own mysteries. Time inside Blood Moon and feels suspended. Moments stretch, folding past and present together. Visitors often find themselves drawn to particular corners, sensing movement where none should be. Sounds echo in unusual ways. Footsteps repeat without origin, and the whispers continue, calling with gentle insistence. The inn maintains a presence that is constant yet ever-changing, engaging those who enter and leaving them to contemplate what is seen, felt, and imagined. By the time morning arrives, the neon sign dims, and the inn returns to its daytime quiet. Yet the impressions linger. Footsteps, whispers, fleeting shadows, and the sensation of unseen hands remain etched in memory. Blood Moon is more than an abandoned building along a lonely road. It is a space where the past continues to interact with the present, where each visitor becomes part of a living narrative written in shadow, sound, and subtle movement. The haunting of Blood Moon is not one of fear alone. It is a quiet, insistent presence that reminds those who enter that some places hold stories beyond the visible, preserving echoes of lives that continue to wander unseen. Every hallway, every room, and every flicker of red light carries the weight of history and the touch of the unexplained. The inn endures as a silent witness, a liminal space where curiosity meets the unknown, and where the living are invited to step carefully into a world that never truly sleeps. Even as visitors depart, the inn remains alive in memory. Figures continue to drift silently along hallways. Doors move without cause, and whispers persist in the imagination of those who experience them. Blood Moon Inn exists as a threshold, a place where reality and mystery meet, and where every corner holds a subtle pulse of presence that has defined it for decades. It waits quietly, patiently, for the next visitor to walk through its red-lit doors and become part of its ongoing story. Ghost Ridge Motel stands quietly near the edge of a barren ridge, where the desert stretches endlessly in every direction. The structure appears ordinary in daylight, a modest building with rows of rooms and a parking area that catches the last rays of sun. Yet as evening descends, the atmosphere changes. Shadows deepen, and an unsettling stillness settles over the ridge, making the motel feel more isolated than its location already suggests. Visitors often report an immediate sense of being watched upon arrival. Even before entering, a subtle chill in the air suggests the presence of unseen observers. The desert beyond the ridge seems to hold more than sand and stone, with faint outlines appearing in the moonlight, shapes that vanish when approached, leaving nothing but empty air. Inside the motel, hallways carry a silence that is rarely broken, except by soft footsteps or the distant creak of floorboards. Guests describe sudden cold spots in rooms that should otherwise be warm, a chill brushing against their arms or neck, as if invisible hands are moving through the air. The sensation is brief but unmistakable, leaving a lingering sense of unease. Windows overlook the desert, offering a clear view of the ridge and the surrounding sands. Some have seen figures moving across the dunes, outlines too precise to be tricked by shadows or wind. They shift and fade into the desert, leaving viewers uncertain whether they have glimpsed something real or imagined. At night, the motel becomes a place of heightened awareness. Lights flicker intermittently, hallways stretch into darkness, and doors creak open or close without explanation. The rooms themselves seem alive, filled with quiet energy that responds to the presence of guests. Objects occasionally shift, and personal items are sometimes discovered in places they had not been left, adding to the sense that the motel is inhabited by more than just the living. The desert wind carries a unique sound, whispering across the ridge and through the thin walls of the motel. Guests report faint murmurs that seem to come from the dunes, words indistinct yet unmistakably directed toward them. The sound is fleeting, often disappearing the moment one turns to locate its source, reinforcing the feeling of being observed by something beyond comprehension. Visitors have described seeing shapes in corners of rooms that vanish when approached. Shadows move independently from any known light source, elongating and contracting as if breathing alongside the guests. Even common spaces like the lobby or breakfast area hold a subtle tension, where sudden drops in temperature and unexplained movements make the environment feel alive in a way that is both captivating and unsettling. Some have recorded experiences of cold hands brushing against their faces or arms in the dark, an invisible presence that is felt but cannot be seen. These sensations are often accompanied by whispers, a quiet voice that seems to drift from one room to another, growing faint as it passes by, and fading entirely if directly addressed. The combination of physical and auditory anomalies creates an immersive environment that lingers in memory long after the visit ends. The ridge itself seems to play a role in the motel as phenomena. Its elevated position provides a unique vantage point over the surrounding desert, where the movement of sand and shadows in the moonlight creates an otherworldly backdrop. Figures seen on the ridge appear partially human but impossibly faint, their edges dissolving into the sands as if the land itself carries echoes of those who have walked it before. Ghost Ridge Motel has gained a reputation among travelers not for luxury or comfort, but for the experiences that defy ordinary explanation. Guests describe a mixture of fear and fascination, drawn to the motel by stories of its unusual occurrences and a desire to witness something beyond the natural world. Each visit is unique, with no two experiences identical, yet all carry a sense of the supernatural that is undeniable and persistent. Yet all carry a sense of the supernatural that is undeniable and persistent. Even in the quiet daylight, the motel retains a subtle tension. Shadows cast by the ridge stretch long across the desert floor, and the wind carries sounds that seem to belong to another time. Visitors notice a heightened awareness of their surroundings, a feeling that the ridge and motel together hold secrets waiting to be discovered. Night amplifies the motel's presence. Figures drift across hallways and appear momentarily at the edge of vision, vanishing when observed directly. Whispers continue to echo, moving from room to room, seemingly aware of every movement. Cold spots strike without warning, startling even the most seasoned guests. The combination of visual, auditory, and physical phenomena makes Ghost Ridge Motel a place where the boundary between reality and the unexplained blurs. Those who leave often speak of the lingering sensation of being followed, of glances felt rather than seen, and of impressions that cannot be explained by logic alone. The Desert Ridge and its motel hold an enduring mystery, a place where the land, the building, and the unseen converge. Visitors come seeking stories, but many depart carrying experiences that remain etched in memory, haunting and beautiful, a reminder that some places retain the echoes of those who have passed long after they are gone. Ghost Ridge Motel endures as a testament to the strange and the unexplained, perched on its desert ridge, where shadows, whispers, and cold touches persist. The ridge and motel together create an environment that is both alluring and disquieting, inviting exploration, while reminding all who enter that some mysteries are best felt rather than fully understood. The silver dust sits quietly along a lonely stretch of highway, its faded signs swaying in the wind. By day, it appears as any ordinary roadside inn, weathered and sun-bleached. Yet by night, the building takes on a presence that is difficult to define. Guests often describe an atmosphere thick with anticipation, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. Inside, the air carries a subtle chill. Mirrors, usually clear and reflective, often fog overnight, with words and symbols that no one claims to have written. The messages are fleeting, appearing only to be gone when the morning sun touches the glass. Guests awaken with a lingering unease, feeling the traces of something unseen having moved through their rooms. Hallways stretch into dim light, lined with doors that occasionally open on their own. The sound of hinges creaking is often the first warning, a subtle indication that the inn is more than it appears. Figures are rarely seen in full, yet glimpses of shadow pass just beyond peripheral vision. The sensation of being watched lingers long after footsteps fade into silence. Outside, the parking lot holds its own mysteries. Whispers drift across empty spaces, carried by a wind that feels deliberate in its movement. Visitors report hearing sounds of footsteps that never align with the vehicles parked there. The murmurs are soft, unintelligible at first, then sometimes forming distinct syllables that seem to echo from nowhere. The night stretches, dense with tension and uncertainty. The interior rooms of the silver dust and reveals subtle signs of past activity, though no one is present. Chairs are slightly moved, drawers left ajar, and curtains occasionally flutter without a breeze. Guests describe moments of hesitation before entering a room, the instinctive feeling that someone or something is already there, observing quietly from the shadows. Footsteps on staircases are common, though the stairs themselves often remain empty. The sound is measured, as if someone is pacing deliberately, never rushing, never stopping. When visitors venture closer, the noises abruptly cease, leaving a silence that feels almost oppressive. It is this rhythm of sound and absence that gives the inn its chilling character. Lights flicker intermittently throughout the building, revealing glimpses of empty hallways and rooms. At times, the illumination highlights fleeting shapes that vanish when approached. The subtle interplay of shadow and light creates a sense of depth and uncertainty, drawing attention to corners and spaces that would otherwise go unnoticed. Guests often find themselves pausing, listening, waiting for movement that may or may not occur. The subtle interplay of shadow and light creates a sense of depth and uncertainty, drawing attention to corners and spaces that would otherwise go unnoticed. The inn's exterior mirrors the unsettling energy inside. The wind sweeps through the property with an almost sentient cadence, rustling signs, and shifting debris across the parking lot. Even under the quiet of night, the building exerts a presence over its surroundings, influencing the natural sounds and movements of the desert. Figures appear at the edge of vision, disappearing into the darkness before they can be fully perceived. Time within the inn seems fluid. Moments stretch and contract in ways that defy expectation. Guests report sudden feelings of dizziness or altered perception, followed by intervals of clarity that make the anomalies more pronounced. It is as if the inn subtly manipulates the experience of reality, immersed in an altered state of awareness. Whispers remain a constant. Some are fleeting, almost imperceptible, while others are more insistent, carrying across hallways and parking areas. Occasionally, the whispers form patterns, subtle repetitions, that seem to hint at communication or intention. It is this auditory presence, paired with the visual anomalies, that creates a feeling of being accompanied, even when alone. By dawn, the silver dust returns to a deceptive calm. Mirrors are clear, hallways quiet, and the wind drops to a soft murmur. Guests leave with impressions of shapes seen from the corner of the eye, sounds that defy explanation, and a sense that the inn has imprinted itself upon their consciousness. The silver dust endures as a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary intersect. Every corridor, mirror, and flickering light tells a story of presence and absence, observation and mystery. Visitors sense the layered history embedded in the walls, the echoes of unseen guests who continue to wander the halls. Those who encounter the silver dust and carry the experience with them, a reminder that even in the quietest stretches of road, the world holds spaces where the veil between the seen and unseen is thin. The inn waits patiently, silently, its presence a constant invitation for travelers to step beyond the ordinary and witness a reality that exists just out of reach. Desert Lantern Motel stands alone along the edge of a barren desert highway, its neon lantern sign flickering intermittently, casting an eerie glow across the cracked asphalt. By day, the motel appears unremarkable, a quiet stop for travelers passing through the sun-scorched landscape. The heat distorts the horizon, and the silence seems almost comforting. But as night falls, the motel transforms. The flickering neon lantern casts long, wavering shadows across the walls. Guests speak of sudden chills, as if someone stands just behind them, yet no one is there. The air is heavier at night, carrying the weight of unseen eyes and unspoken stories. Figures drift silently along the corridors. Some appear briefly in the glow of hallway lights, a fleeting presence that disappears when approached. They move with purpose, yet their steps make no sound. The rooms themselves seem aware of the living, objects shifting subtly, chairs angled differently, personal items disturbed without explanation. It is not violence or malice, but an unmistakable awareness, a lingering touch of presence that cannot be ignored. The Motella-esque architecture amplifies the unsettling atmosphere. Long hallways curve unexpectedly. Narrow staircases lead to rooms whose doors sometimes seem to close by themselves. And windows frame the desert night in ways that make shadows appear deeper than they should. Footsteps echo along floors where no one walks, and the soft murmur whispers seems to carry from wall to wall, impossible to locate. Every sound, every flicker of light, feels deliberate, as if the building remembers the countless visitors who have passed through its doors. Outside, the desert wind carries a strange resonance. The sound of shifting sand seems to echo with faint voices, whispers that cannot be traced to any living source. Figures are seen at the edges of property, standing near the dunes or pacing slowly along the parking lot. They linger in the periphery, vanishing the instant one turns to look directly at them. The neon lantern reflects off the desert floor, illuminating forms that vanish the instant one turns to look directly at them. Inside the rooms, the sensation of being watched intensifies. Guests describe objects moving without cause, lights flickering when no one is near, and an oppressive cold that settles over the bed. Some wake to find personal items rearranged, yet the locks remain untouched and no doors have been forced. The air grows dense, filled with the echo of invisible footsteps and the faintest traces of sound, like a distant conversation carried just beyond hearing. The motel's pool area is equally enigmatic. At night, the water reflects more than the moonlight. Some have claimed to see figures at the edge of the pool, sitting motionless, watching or disappearing into the darkness. Shadows play across the surface in ways that defy explanation, ripples appearing where no movement should exist. The desert wind carries a faint sound of laughter, crying, or whispers, fleeting and indistinct, yet unervingly close. Every corner of Desert Motel holds a story, from the cracked tiles of the lobby to the peeling paint along the exterior walls. The building carries echoes of past guests and perhaps of those who never left. Hallways stretch into darkness, doors move subtly, and the neon lantern flickers like a heartbeat, casting light over forms that are not entirely of this world. Guests cannot always explain what they see, hear, or feel, but the experiences leave a lasting impression, a reminder that the motel is more than a resting place. Even in silence, the motel communicates. Cold spots appear without warning, lights blink without cause, and footsteps echo where no living foot has tread. Shadowy forms appear in mirrors or along walls, vanishing when confronted. The building seems alive, attentive, a silent observer of every visitor who passes through its doors. Every whisper, every flicker of light, every shadow contributes to the story that has been unfolding for decades. Guests leave Desert Motel carrying a sense of presence that lingers long after departure. The desert itself seems to hold its breath, the wind carrying the faint echo of figures that remain unseen. The neon lantern continues to flicker, casting its glow across empty hallways and silent corridors, a beacon that hints at stories unseen and presences felt. Desert Motel is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary intersect. It is quiet during the day, yet at night the building awakens with the memories of the past. Shadows drift, whispers float through empty halls, and cold touches remind the living that they are never truly alone. Every visitor becomes part of its ongoing narrative, a story carried forward by the wind, the neon light, and the lingering presence of those who remain. The desert night stretches on, the wind shifting sand across the parking lot, and the neon lantern continues its quiet, flickering pulse. Hallways await the footsteps of the living, rooms hold echoes of the unseen, and the motel endures as a place where history, memory, and presence converge. Hallways await the footsteps of the living, rooms hold echoes of the unseen, and the motel endures as a place where history, memory, and presence converge. Hallways await the footsteps of the living, rooms hold echoes of the unseen, and the motel endures as a place where history, memory, and presence converge. Desert Motel remains, a silent sentinel, observing, remembering, and watching over every traveler who dares to stop and spend the night in its enigmatic halls. Desert Motel remains, a silent sentinel, observing, remembering, and watching over every traveler who dares to stop and spend the night in its enigmatic halls. Desert Motel remains, a silent sentinel, observing, remembering, and watching over every traveler who dares to stop and spend the night in its enigmatic halls. Mirage Motel sits alone along a deserted stretch of highway, its faded sign swaying gently in the desert wind. By day it appears quiet and still, a relic of a time when travelers passed through more often. Yet as night falls, the motel seems to awaken. Shadows stretch along the walls, and a strange energy fills the air, subtle yet undeniable. Guests have reported seeing figures standing in hallways or at room entrances, only for them to vanish the moment one approaches. Inside, the rooms carry a weight of unseen activity. Furniture shifts as if moved by invisible hands. Chairs tilt and drawers slide partially open. Beds appear subtly rearranged, as if something has been there. Each adjustment feels like a message or a reminder that the space is not entirely under human control. The desert wind seems to carry more than sand and dust. Whispers float across the grounds, soft voices speaking names that no one should know. They move with the wind, drifting through cracks in doors and under windows, brushing across the skin like faint, icy fingers. The sound is intimate and persistent, compelling those who hear it to pause, to listen closely, and to wonder who or what calls to them in the empty night. The hallways of Mirage Motel are long and narrow, their faded carpeted floors worn from years of passage. Footsteps echo unpredictably, sometimes following guests, sometimes vanishing into silence. Figures are glimpsed at the periphery of vision, never fully revealed, always retreating when confronted. These apparitions are fleeting but constant, creating an atmosphere of suspense that builds with every passing hour. Visitors often describe a sensation of being watched, a quiet awareness that the motel itself is conscious in some way. Doors open and close with no explanation, and lights flicker at irregular intervals. Each flicker seems to mark the presence of something nearby, a subtle indicator that the space is alive with unseen activity. Even the simplest act, like turn to enter a room, can provoke a sense of anticipation, as though the motel responds to every movement and decision. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, its vast openness contrasting with the intimate confinement of the motel. Yet the landscape itself seems charged with energy. Figures appear along the edges of the property, standing at a distance before fading into the darkness. Their movements are silent, deliberate, as though they inhabit a world parallel to the one the living occupy. Guests feel their presence not only in sight, but in the air around them, a quiet pressure that is difficult to ignore. The atmosphere inside the rooms is heavy, tinged with the scent of dust and aged wood. Objects seem to hold memory, and the subtle energy that fills the space is almost tactile. Cold spots appear without warning, brushing across skin or settling in corners, a reminder of the unseen. Visitors experience a sense of displacement, caught between reality and something beyond understanding, a liminal space where time and perception bend. Mirage Motel's history seems embedded in every corner. Its walls have absorbed countless encounters, stories, and presences, each leaving an impression. The air hums with faint echoes of past guests and spectral inhabitants, a chorus that blends with the natural sounds of the desert. Even those who arrive skeptical find themselves noticing anomalies they cannot explain. Each night becomes a tapestry of movement, sound, and sensation, weaving together the ordinary and the uncanny. By morning, the motel returns to its outwardly still appearance, and the desert sun casts long, warming shadows across the grounds. Yet the impressions linger. Footsteps, shifting furniture, fleeting figures, and whispers persist in memory. Mirage Motel is more than a place to rest. It is a threshold where the living encounter traces of the unseen, where presence and absence exist simultaneously, and where every visitor leaves a part of themselves behind, absorbed into the continuing story of the motel. Each stay at Mirage Motel is unique, yet all share a common thread, the sense that something watches, listens, and moves among the rooms and hallways. Figures drift silently, whispers carry across the desert night, and the environment itself responds to every intrusion of the living. The motel endures as a space of subtle tension, where curiosity meets the unknown, and where the desert wind carries the voices of the unseen to anyone willing to listen. Those who depart often reflect on the experience with lingering unease and fascination. The motel's presence is not menacing but persistent, a quiet reminder of forces that defy explanation. Mirage Motel remains a place suspended in time and perception, a liminal zone where every shadow and whisper hints at stories left untold. The desert surrounds it with isolation, yet within its walls, the energy of countless presences continues, ensuring that the legend of the motel will endure as long as travelers pass through its doors. Mirage Motel is a silent witness, a place where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, and where the living brush against the unseen. Figures vanish into walls, furniture moves without cause, and whispers drift across the desert wind. Every step through its hallways, every glance across its grounds, carries a subtle weight of history, memory, and presence. It waits quietly, patiently, for the next visitor to enter, and for the cycle of observation, sensation, and the inexplicable to continue. The Lone Star Motel, sits quietly along a lonely stretch of highway, its neon sign flickering against the night sky. By day, it seems like any other roadside stop, with rows of rooms and parked cars lined up neatly along the asphalt. But as twilight falls, the motel takes on a different presence, one that hints at a long and unsettled past. Guests arriving in the evening feel a strange stillness, an awareness of being observed even before stepping inside. The air grows cooler, and the ordinary sounds of the highway fade, replaced by the subtle creaks and groans of an old building settling into the night. Shadows stretch across the walls and hallways, sometimes seeming to move of their own accord. Inside, the motel carries a quiet tension. Figures have been reported in windows, appearing for a moment and vanishing when approached. Footsteps echo along corridors long after the last visitor has passed, creating the feeling that something or something follows silently behind. The halls are lined with doors that hide more than just rooms, each one potentially harboring the unexplained. In some rooms, guests notice objects shifting without explanation. Chairs tilt, doors click closed, and small items move as if nudged by unseen hands. These occurrences are often subtle, enough to unsettle without creating panic, yet persistent enough to leave visitors questioning the nature of the space they occupy. The combination of sights, sounds, and sensations forms an atmosphere thick with anticipation, where every shadow can hold a story. The motel-esque exterior is no less mysterious. The parking lot is often deserted late at night, with only the distant hum of the highway breaking the silence. Figures have been glimpsed walking between cars or standing near the entrance, disappearing when anyone looks directly. The neon sign buzzes sporadically, casting a flickering glow that illuminates the empty grounds in brief, haunting bursts. Whispers carry through the air on still nights, soft murmurs that seem to emerge from the walls themselves. They drift through hallways, across rooms, and into the darkness outside, vanishing when approached. The sound is intangible yet distinct, creating a sense that the motel remembers more than its guests ever could, holding on to echoes of the past that refuse to fade. Some visitors speak of cold spots that appear suddenly, chilling the air in certain rooms or corners of the hallways. These drops in temperature are accompanied by a heightened awareness of unseen presences, as though the space itself reacts to those who enter. Even in moments of quiet, the building seems alive, carrying the weight of experiences and memories that linger beyond the realm of the ordinary. The Lone Star Motel's long history adds to its mystique. Stories of travelers, lost nights, and unexplained phenomena weave together into an atmosphere that is both fascinating and unnerving. Each room has its own character, shaped by the events that have transpired within, from fleeting shadows to the unexplained movement of objects. Guests enter seeking rest, but often leave with memories that linger far longer than the hours spent inside. Late at night, the motel becomes a stage for the extraordinary. Footsteps echo without source, shadows drift along walls, and the faint outline of figures can be seen in windows where no one resides. Objects continue to move, sometimes imperceptibly, other times with startling clarity. The combined effect is subtle terror, an awareness of the unseen that keeps visitors alert and intrigued throughout the hours of darkness. Outside, the desert landscape amplifies the feeling of isolation. The stretch of highway is long and uninhabited. The desert or countryside beyond seems to merge with the night sky. Lights from passing cars are rare. The wind carries a hollow sound that echoes against the building. Within this stillness, the motel stands as both a beacon and a warning, a place where ordinary reality gives way to the uncanny. Many who spend the night report a sense of being watched, the sensation that the building itself is alive with memory and presence. Whispers, footsteps, and cold touches all serve to remind visitors that the Lone Star Motel is more than a place to sleep it is a threshold to the unknown. Each night brings new encounters, new experiences, and new mysteries, making it impossible to leave unchanged. The haunting here is not violent or grotesque, but subtle and persistent. It exists in the shifting shadows, the sounds that cannot be explained, and the fleeting impressions that linger in the corners of the mind. Guests leave with stories, sometimes questioning their own perceptions, yet unable to deny the strange energy that fills the halls. The Lone Star Motel endures as a quiet landmark along the road, a place of transient beauty and lasting mystery. Its rooms, hallways, and parking lot carry a history of human presence and spectral echoes, blending into an environment that captivates the curious and unsettles the wary. Those who visit find themselves part of a larger narrative, one that stretches beyond the highway, beyond time, and into the realm of the unexplained. Even after leaving, the memory of the Lone Star Motel lingers, a flickering sign, footsteps in the dark, and the sense that someone or something is still there, watching and waiting, ready to share its story with anyone willing to step across the threshold. The rusted wheel and sits quietly along a long-forgotten highway, its weathered sign creaking in the wind. Dust coats the windows, muting the light that filters into the lobby. By day, it appears as a relic of a bygone era. But as night falls, the building awakens with an unseen presence. The air grows thick and heavy, as if holding the memories of countless visitors who have passed through its doors. Inside, the lobby stretches wide, lined with faded carpets and worn furniture. Guests often report seeing figures moving just beyond the edge of vision. They are shadowy forms, drifting silently through hallways, appearing and disappearing without warning. The lobbies and corridors are alive with a quiet hum, a subtle vibration that hints at the unseen activity occurring within. Whispers follow visitors from room to room, soft and indistinct, yet persistent. The voices seem to know the guests, calling their attention with familiarity that is impossible to explain. Sometimes the whispers rise and fall like a distant conversation. Other times they punctuate the stillness with a deliberate cadence. The effect is unsettling, a reminder that the inn is not simply empty space, but home to unseen inhabitants. Rooms themselves hold peculiar disturbances. Guests awaken to find personal belongings rearranged, though no one else has entered. Chairs are shifted slightly, drawers left ajar, and clothing placed in unexpected positions. The changes are subtle, but intentional, creating the impression of movement guided by unseen hands. Each room seems to carry its own energy, a unique combination of past and present, blending into a single, lingering presence. The hallways stretch endlessly, dimly lit by flickering bulbs that cast shadows in shifting patterns. The floors creak with every step, yet sometimes footsteps can be heard without anyone in sight. Doors open and close slowly on their own, creating a rhythm that is both eerie and mesmerizing. The sense of being followed is constant, as if the walls themselves are observing every movement, cataloging each presence that crosses their threshold. The inn-esque exterior mirrors its inner mysteries. The parking lot is often empty, yet visitors swear they feel watched as they approach. The wind carries distant murmurs that rise and fall unpredictably, intertwining with the sound of branches scraping against the weathered siding. Even in the stillness, the inn exudes a presence that cannot be ignored. Lights flicker sporadically throughout the building, illuminating empty spaces for brief moments. These glimpses often reveal shapes just beyond deception, figures standing silently in corners or by windows. Guests describe a sensation of being observed, even when alone, as if the inn itself is aware of their every thought and movement. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls, merging and separating in ways that defy explanation. Time within the rusted wheel, and behaves unpredictably. Moments can feel elongated, each sound echoing with weight and meaning. Visitors often sense a distortion in perception, a subtle tug on their awareness that makes ordinary events feel charged with significance. Then exists outside conventional measures of time, allowing the past and present to intersect in fleeting, tangible ways. Whispers remain a constant companion, sometimes so faint that they are almost imperceptible. At other times, they swell with intensity, circling the listener and drawing attention to unseen corners. The combination of sound, movement, and absence creates an atmosphere of profound anticipation, as if the inn itself is alive and engaged with those who enter. By dawn, the rusted wheel returns to a deceptive calm. Shadows recede, and the hallways fall silent once more. Yet the traces of the night linger. Every creak, flicker, and whisper remains etched in memory, a testament to the building's enduring, intangible life. The rusted wheel Inn is more than a building. It is a convergence of history, memory, and unseen forces. Each corridor, each room, and each flickering light carries the essence of those who have come before, creating a tapestry of observation, movement, and quiet intention. Even in silence, the Inn exerts its influence. Guests leave forever changed, carry with them the subtle feeling of being watched, followed, and remembered. The rusted wheel Inn endures as a space where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, a place where time is fluid, present is constant, and the unseen is always near. Those who enter its doors step into a reality that is alive, breathing, and eternally attentive, a spectral world hidden within the familiar shape of an old roadside inn. Those who enter its doors step into a reality that is alive, breathing, and eternally attentive, a spectral world hidden within the familiar shape of an old roadside inn. Dunes Motel sits isolated on the edge of the desert, a lone stretch of buildings bathed in the fading light of day. By afternoon, the heat shimmers across the asphalt. The silence seems almost protective. The wind stirs faint trails of sand across the parking lot, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and distant horizons. As night falls, the atmosphere changes. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls, and the air grows cooler. The neon sign at the entrance flickers, casting intermittent glows across the hallways and empty walkways. It is at this time that visitors notice the subtle signs that Dunes Motel is no ordinary stop along a desert road. Figures appear at doors and along corridors. They do not move like the living, their steps silent, their presence barely tangible, yet undeniable. Guests report sudden chills, as if someone has passed closer behind them, icy hands brushing their shoulders. Yet when they turn, the halls remain empty. It is a feeling that lingers, a weight that presses quietly against the senses, impossible to ignore. The architecture of the motel amplifies the unease. Even the faintest sound echoes unnaturally, footsteps seeming to come from multiple directions at once, whispers carried along the walls, impossible to locate. Every movement, every sound feels observed, as though the building itself is aware of each visitor. Windows reflect more than the desert night. Shapes appear along their surfaces, shadowy forms that shift when looked at directly. Guests have described seeing figures standing silently, staring outward from the darkness beyond, only to vanish when approached. These glimpses are brief yet persistent, leaving a sense that the motel exists between two worlds, a place where the living and the unseen overlap. Rooms hold a strange energy. Personal belongings sometimes shift slightly overnight. Chairs angled differently. Objects move with no logical explanation. Lights flicker intermittently, often coinciding with a sensation of presence. Cold spots emerge without warning, concentrated areas where the warmth of the desert night cannot penetrate, leaving guests shivering and unnerved. The feeling is never hostile, but it is undeniable, a constant reminder that the motel remembers those who have passed through. The exterior of Dunes Motel offers no reprieve. Figures appear near the edges of the parking lot, standing motionless in the dim glow of the neon sign, then vanishing into the darkness. The desert sand shifts unnaturally in some areas, disturbed as if summonia or something that has passed recently, leaving no footprints yet a clear impression of movement. Even common areas of the motel seem touched by an unseen presence. The pool reflects more than the moonlight, ripples forming in still water where no movement occurs. Hallways echo with the faintest sounds of conversation, laughter, or sorrow, carried just out of hearing range, leaving guests unsure if they have imagined it or witnessed it. Shadows move with an almost deliberate intent, appearing along walls or near doorways, vanishing the instant attention is drawn to them. The motel's history seems etched into every wall, every creaking floorboard. It is as if Dunes Motel has absorbed the countless stories of those who stayed, and now continues to replay them, subtly, for those who remain after dark. Visitors report a heightened sense of awareness, the feeling that they are never truly alone, that every glance down a hallway or past a corner may reveal a presence just beyond perception. Guests leave carrying impressions that linger long after departure. The desert sun rises to illuminate an ordinary facade, yet the memory of icy touches, flickering lights, and silent figures remains vivid. The neon sign continues its rhythmic flicker, a silent witness to the ongoing life of the motel, marking it as a place where the ordinary intersects with the inexplicable. Dunes Motel is more than a stop along a desert road. It is a place where the desert night breathes life into shadows, where hallways carry whispers and the very air seems aware of the living. Each visitor becomes part of its ongoing story, contributing to the atmosphere that defines it. As the wind shifts sand across the parking lot, hallways await footsteps, rooms hold echoes, and the desert stretches endlessly, carrying the subtle presence of Dunes Motel far beyond its walls. Night deepens, the wind rises, and the neon lantern continues to flicker, casting uncertain light across the deserted hallways and shadow corridors. The figures remain, drifting silently, brushing past shoulders, standing at doors, watching. Every visitor is left with a sense that they have passed through a place alive with memory, presence, and subtle unrest. Dunes Motel endures as a sentinel of the desert, a resting place for travelers and a haven for the unseen, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary under the veil of night. Coyote Moon Motel rests alone on a stretch of desert highway, its neon sign flickering faintly against the dark sky. By day it appears quiet and abandoned, a place that travelers might pass without a second glance. Yet as the sun dips below the horizon, the motel seems to awaken. Shadows stretch along walls and hallways, moving with an eerie independence that unsettles even the most skeptical guests. Inside the rooms, the air carries a weight that is both subtle and persistent. Guests report feeling watched, a quiet awareness that something unseen occupies the space alongside them. Figures appear at the edges of vision, drifting silently through hallways or standing at room entrances, only to vanish when confronted. Each movement is deliberate yet fleeting, leaving behind a sense of unease that lingers long after the encounter. Doors open and close without cause, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes through the hallways. The motel hums with an energy that defies explanation, as if the building itself is alive, observing the movements of those who enter. Furniture sometimes shifts, small items are misplaced, and lights flicker unpredictably, reinforcing the notion that the space responds to the presence of the living. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, illuminated by the cold light of the moon. Whispers drift across the sand, carried by the wind, speaking names or murmuring words that no one alive would know. These voices are intimate and insistent, threading through the rooms and corridors, brushing past guests like invisible fingers. The sound is impossible to locate, moving from one place to another, leaving a lingering impression of presence and attention. The hallways of Coyote Moon Motel are long and narrow, the carpeting worn and faded from years of passage. Footsteps echo and then fade, often leaving visitors unsure if they heard them at all. Shadows flit along the walls, sometimes solid enough to suggest a figure, other times more ephemeral, like smoke caught in the moonlight. Each night becomes a tapestry of movement and sound, where reality and perception intertwine in unsettling ways. Guests often speak of rooms they never rented, but that seem occupied. Figures are reported standing silently, watching from corners or near windows, disappearing before recognition fully sets in. The motel seems to expand in perception, containing spaces that exist outside ordinary understanding. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, reinforces the notion that the Coyote Moon Motel is more than a resting placea. It is a stage for the unseen. Cold spots appear unpredictably, brushing across skin and settling in corners. These brief encounters with chill and shadow create a constant sense of tension, reminding visitors that the motel is a place where the ordinary rules of the physical world are suspended. Whispers continue, moving through hallways, echoing softly, compelling attention yet offering no clarity. The motel exists in a liminal space, a threshold between the known and the unknown, where every glance and sound carries the weight of uncertainty. The history of the motel seems embedded in its very walls. It holds a memory of countless visitors and countless presences, each leaving an imprint on the space. The air hums with echoes of lives past and unseen, a quiet resonance that amplifies the desert's natural solitude. Even those who arrive skeptical find themselves noticing anomalies they cannot explain, each encounter weaving into the growing legend of the motel's restless energy. As night deepens, the desert wind seems to conspire with the motel, carrying voices and movement across the property. Figures appear along the edges of the buildings, standing in silence before melting into the darkness. The wind amplifies whispers and faint footsteps, connecting the motel to the barren landscape surrounding it. Every sound and shadow contributes to an atmosphere charged with anticipation, where curiosity and unease mingle with every step taken along the empty halls. Curiosity and unease mingle with every step taken along the empty halls. By dawn, the Coyote Moon Motel returns to its outward appearance of stillness. The desert stretches unbroken into the distance. Yet for those who stayed overnight, the impressions linger. Footsteps, shifting shadows, fleeting figures, and whispers remain etched in memory. A reminder that the motel is not merely a building, but a space of persistent presence. Each visitor leaves carrying the weight of experience, and the motel absorbs each encounter into its continuing story. Coyote Moon Motel is more than a place to rest. It is a threshold where the living intersect with traces of the unseen. Shadows drift silently, whispers move with the desert wind, and rooms seem alive with subtle energy. The building responds to every presence, every movement, creating a cinematic tension that is felt rather than seen. It is a place where perception and reality bend, where every night becomes a performance of quiet, unexplainable phenomena. Those who depart often speak of lingering unease, a fascination with a motel that grows with distance. The Coyote Moon Motel endures as a space where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, a liminal zone that draws attention to the unseen. Figures vanish into walls, whispers call across the desert, and guests leave with a sense that the motel continues to watch and move, patiently waiting for the next traveler to enter and experience its quiet, haunting presence. Each encounter at the Coyote Moon Motel is unique, yet all share the same thread of subtle interaction with the unknown. Shadows move along walls, whispers drift across empty rooms, and unseen hands leave their mark through sensation and Whispers drift across empty rooms, and unseen hands leave their mark through sensation and cold. Unseen hands leave their mark through sensation and cold. The motel stands as a sentinel in the desert, a place suspended between worlds. A place suspended between worlds, where stories are written in fleeting figures, quiet sounds, and the enduring presence of the unexplained. The dusty trail sits quietly along a desolate stretch of highway, a lone structure in a vast expanse of desert and scrub. By day, it seems like any other roadside motel, with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. But as the sun sinks below the horizon, a different presence awakens within its walls. Visitors arriving after dark often feel an immediate shift in the air. The wind seems to carry voices that vanish when approached, and the empty parking lot echoes with the soft scrape of unseen footsteps. Shadows stretch across the faded walls of the inn, elongating and twisting as if they have a life of their own. Inside, the halls tell a story of lingering energy. Doors creak open and close on their own, sometimes gently, other times with suddenness that makes the heart leap. Guests have reported hearing faint whispers, as though someone is speaking directly to them from the darkness. Yet when they turn, no one is there. Each room seems to hold its own secrets, from cold spots that appear without warning to the fleeting impression of someone standing silently at the foot of the bed. The motel's exterior adds to the eerie atmosphere. The empty highway stretches endlessly in both directions, lit only by the pale glow of the neon sign and the occasional headlights of a passing car. Figures have been glimpsed moving near the parking lot, their forms barely distinguishable against the dark horizon. The wind carries strange, almost melodic sounds, voices that seem to rise from the building itself and drift into the night. Guests who have spent the night speak of cold touches that leave no mark, sudden chills that brush across their skin as if invisible hands are testing the boundaries of the living. These experiences are subtle yet undeniable, creating a lingering tension that persists long after the sun rises. Even in the quiet of the day, the inn maintains a sense of anticipation, as though the walls remember every footstep, every conversation, and every presence that has ever crossed the threshold. The inn's hallways are lined with doors that conceal more than rooms. Each door seems to pulse with memory, and some have reported hearing activity behind them when the rooms are supposedly empty. Soft footsteps echo down long corridors, and fleeting shadows appear at the edges of vision. The sounds are never consistent, never predictable, creating an atmosphere where even the bravest visitor feels a subtle unease. The dusty trail inn is more than a place to rest. It is a crossroads of the ordinary and the extraordinary. The energy within the building is quiet yet persistent, manifesting in ways that cannot always be explained. Guests have reported lights flickering in unoccupied rooms, objects subtly moving from their places, and the sensation of being watched, a feeling that lingers even after leaving. Outside, the surrounding landscape intensifies the isolation. The highway is long and mostly empty, with only the distant hum of traffic or the occasional howl of desert wind to break the silence. In this emptiness, the inn stands as a solitary beacon, its history and presence amplifying the strange occurrences inside. Many who visit the dusty trail and describe a sensation of being part of a larger story, one that spans decades. The inn seems to hold the echoes of those who have passed through, preserving fragments of memory in the very air. Footsteps, whispers, and cold touches all serve as reminders that the building is alive with history, both seen and unseen. At night, the motel becomes a stage for the unexplained. Voices drift through empty halls. Footsteps reverberate along the wooden floors, and the faint outlines of figures can be glimpsed in the corners of rooms. These events are rarely frightening in a dramatic sense, but are profoundly unsettling, creating an awareness of forces beyond the ordinary. The dusty trail inn does not shout its presence. It lingers, subtle and persistent, inviting curiosity while maintaining an air of mystery. Visitors leave the inn with stories that are difficult to articulate yet impossible to ignore. Some speak of seeing movement from the corner of their eyes, of cold air brushing their skin, and whispers that seem to call directly to them. Others notice objects slightly displaced or doors that are closed when they remember leaving them open. These small, inexplicable occurrences form a tapestry of experiences that define the inn's reputation. The dusty trail inn endures as more than a building along a lonely road. It is a place where time feels suspended, where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist in quiet tension. Guests are seeking rest or shelter, but leave with an awareness that the inn holds more than mere rooms and hallways. It preserves echoes of the past, traces of those who have come and gone, and the lingering presence of forces that cannot be easily explained. Even after departing, the memory of the dusty trail inn lingers. The sound of distant footsteps, the sensation of cold brushes against the skin, and the fleeting glimpses of shadows all remain etched in the mind. The highway stretches onward, empty and silent, but the inn stands as a reminder that some places retain the stories of those who have crossed their thresholds, waiting quietly for the next traveler to step inside. The Phantom Highway Motel sits on a lonely stretch of road, its neon sign flickering in the darkness, casting fractured light across the asphalt. By day, it appears worn but unassuming, a typical roadside stop. By night, it transforms into a space where the ordinary dissolves and the unseen emerges with subtle, insistent force. Visitors report a sensation of being watched from the moment they arrive. Shadows shift in corners, just beyond the edge of vision. Figures appear briefly in hallways, standing silently before vanishing as if swallowed by the walls. The air carries a chill that seems to settle on the skin, a quiet pressure that speaks of presence without form. Whispers thread through the rooms, soft and insistent. Names are called with deliberate clarity, echoing along corridors and across the parking lot. The voices do not always match the reality of the space. Sometimes they come from empty rooms, or from the walls themselves, lingering just long enough to provoke a shiver before fading into silence. Footsteps are heard on floors above and below, yet no one is there. Doors open and close slowly, leaving a sense of movement that defies explanation. Some visitors find items shifted from their original places, objects rearranged in a pattern that suggests intention. The motel seems to breathe, alive in a way that surpasses ordinary architecture. Rooms themselves hold mysteries unique to each guest. Lights flicker unpredictably, illuminating empty corners for a moment that feels both long and fleeting. Mirrors sometimes reflect images that do not belong, capturing shapes behind a viewer or movements at the edge of perception. The feeling of being followed is constant, subtle but undeniable, as though the building itself watches and responds to every action. Hallways stretch endlessly, their corners hiding more than they reveal. Carpets are worn but muffled, absorbing footsteps and whispers alike. The faint scent of old wood and dust lingers in the air, mingling with something indefinable. A presence felt more than seen. Even the silence carries weight, a quiet insistence that something lies just beyond the conscious mind. At night, the parking lot takes on its own life. The wind seems to carry voices along the pavement, and the flickering neon sign throws shadows that suggest movement. Guests report fleeting glimpses of figures standing silently by their cars, vanishing when approached. Some feel an unseen hand brush their shoulder, a sensation that lingers long after the moment has passed. Time within the Phantom Highway Motel is mutable. Hours stretch and contract unpredictably. Moments feel charged with significance. Ordinary events acquiring a weight that is impossible to measure. Guests often lose track of time, drawn into the rhythm of the space, where past and present intermingle. And the unseen becomes tangible. The motel seems to respond to its visitors. Doors lock or unlock without explanation. Lights flicker as if in response to presence. The building itself behaves like a living organism, subtly guiding, observing, and engaging those who pass through its doors. Whispers rise and fall in cadence, a haunting music that seems to weave the stories of the past with the experiences of the present. Some visitors perceive fleeting shapes in the darkness, figures that move just out of clear view, their intent and form ambiguous. The sensation is not frightening in the conventional sense, but profoundly unsettling, a reminder that the motel exists in a space beyond normal perception. By dawn, the Phantom Highway Motel returns to its deceptive calm. Shadows retreat, hallways fall silent, and the chill dissipates. Guests carry away impressions, sensations, and memories that cannot be fully explained. The motel leaves its mark on perception, a quiet insistence that it is more than a building, more than a temporary stop along a highway. Every corridor, every room, and every flickering light contributes to an atmosphere of deep awareness. The space seems conscious of all who enter, cataloging movements, thoughts, and intentions. Those who stay overnight sense an invisible presence that is persistent, deliberate, and observant. It is a place where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, where perception is heightened and the unseen becomes a participant in the experience. Visitors leave changed, carrying the weight of subtle disturbances and silent observations. The Phantom Highway Motel exists beyond simple understanding, a crossroads of history, memory, and presence. It is a place where figures appear and vanish, whispers call names into the darkness, and the ordinary world slips just enough to reveal what lies beneath. To step inside the Phantom Highway Motel is to enter a space where reality bends, where time is mutable, and where unseen eyes are always watching. Every creak, every flicker, every whisper reminds visitors that the motel is alive, attentive, and eternal. Those who arrive may leave, but they are never truly unchanged, marked forever by the persistent, silent life of this haunted roadside haven. Thank you for traveling with me tonight along Arizona's haunted highways. These roadside motels carry stories that the desert wind cannot erase. Figures, whispers, and icy touches linger long after the neon signs have dimmed. Figures, whispers, and icy touches linger long after the neon signs have dimmed. If you ever find yourself on a lonely highway at night, remember what you heard tonight. Listen for whispers, watch for shadows, and never assume you are truly alone. Sleep carefully tonight, if you can.